Chapter 1731. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao both frowned and looked serious. Grandma Long, should we chase after them now? The Sky Wolf mountain range is very close to the North Underworld mountain. Even if we rush there at full speed, I'm afraid we won't make it. Both of them were worried about this and were thinking about how to solve this problem. Grandma Long waved her hand and said earnestly, "You two don't have to participate in this matter. Just stay in the Luotian mountain and cultivate. Ghost experts often appear at the northern border of the Divine Nation recently. It's very dangerous. I won't let you take the risk again. By the time you reach the Sky Wolf mountain range, the blood skulls would have been brought back to the North Underworld mountain. That 10,000 skeleton demon is a Tribulation Realm expert. You won't be able to help even if you go." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were silent and didn't refute Grandma Long's words. After all, what she said was the truth. Ji Tianxing asked, "Grandma Long, what's your plan?" Grandma Long said seriously, "I already have a plan. I'll send a few divine envoys to solve this problem. They will take the Heaven Fate ship and rush to the Sky Wolf mountain range. They should be able to rescue the blood skulls before the ghost race returns to the North Underworld mountain." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao nodded and agreed with her plan. After that, Granny Long gave a few words of advice to the two of them before she turned around and left the hall to assign tasks. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao stopped for a moment before leaving the underground palace. They returned to the Cloud Water Palace and entered their own secret rooms to cultivate while waiting patiently for Grandma Long's news. When the blood skulls were rescued and brought back to the Luotian mountain, Ji Tianxing still had to purify the demonic aura. For the next few days, the Luotian mountain was peaceful. Ji Tianxing had been cultivating diligently in the secret room to strengthen his martial Dao foundation and steadily increase his strength. At the same time, he was also cultivating his sword intent and working hard to make it more prominent and powerful. After 9 days and 9 nights of cultivation, his strength had increased again and was about to reach the peak of the 9th level of the Essence Soul realm. He had a strong premonition that he would be able to break through to the Tribulation realm in 2 to 3 months. At the same time, Yun Yao was also cultivating diligently in the secret room, trying her best to break through to the Tribulation stage. Even though she had already refined the Longevity Divine Pearl and her strength had increased by 1 level, she was still a celestial immortal. However, the power and effects of the Longevity Divine Pearl were far beyond that. Boundless divine power of immortality was hidden in her body and soul, subtly transforming her and making her stronger with each passing day. She could even conclude that the power of a Longevity Divine Pearl could at least allow her to grow to the 6th or 7th level of the Tribulation realm before her power weakened. After 9 days and 9 nights of seclusion, her strength had more than tripled, allowing her to successfully reach the peak of the 9th Firmament Essence Soul realm. Right now, she was already at the perfected Primordial Spirit realm. If he took another step forward, he would be able to break through to the Crossing Calamity realm and step into an even more powerful realm. However, in order to break through to the Tribulation Passing realm, she had to trigger the Heavenly Tribulation and successfully pass it once. She hadn't sensed when the Heavenly Tribulation would come. This meant that her cultivation realm and timing weren't there yet. She still had to wait for a few more days. Half a year ago, she had read up on all the information regarding the Crossing Calamity realm and was very familiar with it. A martial artist's strength surpassed the Primordial Spirit realm. After successfully passing the Heavenly Tribulation, he would reach the 1st level of the Crossing Calamity realm. After reaching the 1st level of the Crossing Calamity realm, if the martial artist's growth was fast enough, he would trigger the 2nd Heavenly Tribulation in 2 to 300 years. If the martial artist's growth was very slow, his strength might even stagnate. After 1,000 years, the 2nd Heavenly Tribulation would definitely come. After successfully passing the 2nd Heavenly Tribulation, one would successfully reach the 2nd level of the Crossing Calamity realm and become even stronger. Those who failed to pass the Heavenly Tribulation would definitely turn into ashes and perish completely. From the 1st level of the Crossing Calamity realm to the 9th level of the Crossing Calamity realm, a martial artist had to go through 9 Heavenly Tribulations and go through 9 trials to become a martial sage. The power of the 9 Heavenly Tribulations would be stronger each time. The 8th and 9th Heavenly Tribulations were extremely terrifying and could be said to be destructive. Since ancient times, there had been countless martial artists who could reach the Crossing Calamity realm. However, there were very few martial artists who could successfully pass the 9th Heavenly Tribulation and break through to the martial sage realm. The ancients said that under the heavenly tribulation, less than 1 in 10 martial artists would survive. This meant that more than 90% of the crossing calamity realm martial artists would perish under the heavenly tribulation. Less than 1 in 10 martial artists could successfully pass the heavenly tribulation. Yunyao understood this information, so she was a little nervous and hesitant. She hoped that the heavenly tribulation would come as soon as possible so that she could break through to the crossing calamity realm. However, she was worried that the heavenly tribulation would come too early and she would not be prepared enough. When the time came, she would be in danger of perishing. On the morning of the 10th day, there was no morning sun in the sky and it was a little gloomy. Tianxia and Yunyao ended their seclusion and walked out of the secret room. The two of them returned to the room and asked each other about the situation. After knowing that each other's strength had increased, they were both gratified for each other. Tianxia knew that Yunyao had reached the peak of the primordial soul realm and said with a smile, "Yao Yao, I didn't expect you to reach the peak of the primordial soul realm before me. It seems that you might pass the heavenly tribulation before me. The power of the longevity divine pearl is indeed extraordinary. According to my estimation, it can help you reach the 7th or 8th tier of the crossing calamity realm in just a few years." Yunyao held his hand and said calmly, "The longevity divine pearl is a divine item. Its power is naturally extraordinary. It's good that I pass the heavenly tribulation first. At least I can learn from it. When you pass the heavenly tribulation, you will know how to deal with it. However, the heavenly tribulation is very powerful. Less than 1 in 10 will survive. I don't know how many heavenly tribulations I can pass." Tianxia smiled and comforted her. "Don't worry. You are a rare top genius in the world and you have inherited the divine Tao inheritance of goddess Yaoguang. If even you can't pass the heavenly tribulation, can a martial sage be born on the Shenwu continent? Anyway, I am very confident in you. You will be fine." "I hope so." Yunyao nodded and continued, "By the way, today is the 10th day. I wonder if the divine envoys have completed their mission. Let's go find Granny Long and ask about the situation." Tianxia nodded and said, "Okay." Afterward, the two of them left the Cloud Water Palace and went to find Granny Long. The two of them arrived at Granny Long's residence and saw her in the study. They went straight to the point and asked about the situation. Granny Long put down the things in her hands and said to the two of them with a gratified expression, "You came at the right time. I just received a message from Divine Envoy due last night. They will be back soon." A few days ago they rushed to the Celestial Wolf Mountain Range and found the Blood Skull and the 10,000 skeletal demon at the border of the Divine Nation and the North Underworld Mountain. The three divine envoys worked together and used all their means to kill the 10,000 skeletal demon and rescue the Blood Skull. They have already brought the Blood Skull back. Calculating the time, they will arrive at the Luotian Mountain at noon today. Tianxia, can't you get rid of the demonic aura for the Blood Skull? Chapter 1732. 100,000 miles away from the Luotian Mountain, there was a vast plain. The plain was rich in resources and the scenery was pleasant. It was the most suitable place for humans to live and cultivate. In the middle of the plain, there was an ancient city that had lasted for 1,000 years. It was called Lanfeng City. There were millions of humans living in the city. The city was very prosperous and lively. In addition, there were dozens of villages and towns scattered around the Lanfeng City. There were hundreds of thousands of people in total. For 1,000 years, the Lanfeng City and many villages and towns had good weather and were very peaceful. The people lived and worked in peace. At this moment, the sun was high in the sky. However, there was no sun in the sky. It was gray and covered with a layer of dark clouds. In the sky, thousands of feet above the ground, there was an icy blue stream of light that was speeding in the direction of the Luotian Mountain. In the icy blue light, there was an exquisite and gorgeous flying boat that was 30 feet long. This was the flying treasure used by the Luotian Mountain. It was called the Heaven Fate Boat. Inside the flying boat, a middle-aged man in a purple robe was controlling the array and driving the flying boat. In the spacious and bright hull, there was an ice crystal coffin that was 15 feet long. It was flowing with colorful lights. In the ice crystal coffin, there was a blood-red skeleton lying quietly. This skeleton was more than 30 feet long and was well preserved. The skeleton was blood-red and emitted a turbulent devil aura. It lay motionless in the coffin. Its body was covered with a layer of colorful flowing light. It was obviously suppressed by the array. On the left and right sides of the ice crystal coffin, there were two middle-aged men sitting cross-legged on the ground. They were quietly resting with their eyes closed. These two middle-aged men were both at the 5th and 6th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. They had a majestic aura. However, the two of them were covered with wounds. Some of the wounds were purple-black and there was still devil aura left. There was no doubt that they had fought fiercely and suffered serious injuries. At this time, the Heaven Fate boat was about to reach the sky above the Lanfeng city. The man in a green robe on the left opened his eyes and glanced at the ice crystal coffin. He then asked, "Divine Envoy Lu, how are your injuries?" The man in a purple robe on the right side of the coffin also opened his eyes. He sighed angrily, "Alas. The other injuries are still okay. They are mostly healed. There are only a few wounds that still have powerful devil aura that can't be removed. Divine Envoy Du, how is your recovery?" Divine Envoy Du smiled bitterly and said, "I'm in the same situation as you. I can't get rid of the remaining demon chi. However, we've already reached Lanfeng City and will be able to return to Luotian Mountain very soon. When the time comes, we can ask Granny Long for help. He might have a way." Divine Emissary Willow suddenly thought of something and hastily said, "By the way, Ji Tianxing said before that he can get rid of the Blood Skull's demon chi. Why don't we ask him for help? I'm sure he has a way." Divine Envoy Du was startled for a moment and said with some embarrassment, "We are all divine envoys as seniors. Isn't it a bit embarrassing to ask a junior for help?" Divine Emissary Willow waved his hand and said, "What is there to be embarrassed about?" Although Ji Tianxing was a god's disciple, he was highly regarded by Granny Long and the Lord God. In my opinion, he will be able to reach the tribulation transcending realm within 1 or 2 years at most. In 100 years, his strength may very well catch up to ours. Divine Envoy Du's face was full of astonishment and he said in disbelief, "Divine Emissary Willow, although I admit that Ji Tianxing is very monstrous and is the #1 genius of the 3 kingdoms, your opinion of him is too high. But aren't you exaggerating a bit by giving him such a high evaluation?" "Oh no. Divine Emissary Willow hastily shook his head and explained with a smile, "This is not an exaggeration at all. Listen to my analysis." The two divine envoys were discussing Ji Tianxing's matter with a very focused look on their faces. However, neither of them noticed that the blood skull lying in the crystal coffin had suddenly changed. Wisps of mysterious black chi gushed out from its body and quietly corroded the layer of golden light barrier. Noiselessly, the golden light barrier was corroded by the black chi and gradually collapsed. The seal of the array was lifted and the blood skull regained its ability to move. However, it was still lying in the crystal coffin without moving an inch, but a dense blood-red light gushed out from its body. The dark red light and the black chi fused together and turned into a black-robed figure in the blink of an eye. This black-robed figure was more than 10 feet tall and had an extremely tall and sturdy body. His body was covered by the black robe and his head was also covered by a large cloak, making it impossible to see his face. Under the pitch-black cloak, only a pair of dark purple eyes could be seen. They shone with a frightening and ferocious light. Suddenly, the black-robed figure raised both of his palms and attacked the crystal coffin lid with all his might. With a loud bang, the lid of the ice crystal coffin was blown away. The huge coffin lid fiercely hit the ceiling of the main hall and exploded into countless pieces, splashing in all directions. The sudden impact created a crater in the ceiling of the main hall. The entire Heaven Fate ship shook violently and flipped in the sky. Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Willow were instantly alerted. They immediately stabilized their bodies and rushed towards the crystal coffin with their swords. "Not good. It's going to escape. Stop it." The two of them held their swords and rushed towards the crystal coffin from the left and right. Before the two of them could see the situation inside the coffin, a tall black figure flew out from the coffin. Bam! Bam! 2 pitch-black palm shadows came towards them and sent Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Willow flying. The two of them spat out blood and flew backward, crashing into the wall fiercely. Boom! Crack! The wall shattered and 2 large holes appeared on the side of the Heaven Fate ship. The 2 divine emissaries flew out of the Heaven Fate ship and into the sky. Immediately after, the tall black figure also broke through the crater in the ceiling of the main hall and pierced through the Heaven Fate ship. Swish! He flew out of the Heaven Fate ship and into the sky. He waved his sleeves and attacked the 2 divine emissaries. The Heaven Fate ship had 3 large holes and was on the verge of losing control. The divine emissary controlling the Heaven Fate ship decisively controlled the array and kept the Heaven Fate ship. Swish. With a flash of light, the huge Heaven Fate ship shrunk thousands of times and became a palm-sized boat. The purple-robed divine emissary appeared in the sky and kept the boat in his interspatial ring. He turned his head and looked forward and immediately saw the situation in the sky. In the sky thousands of feet above the ground, Divine Emissary Dew and Divine Emissary Willow were waving their swords and using their secret techniques to fight with the black-robed man. On the grassland under everyone's feet, there was a prosperous city with a radius of 100 miles. It was Lanfeng City. Seeing this scene, the purple-robed divine emissary's face changed and revealed a look of deep worry. He also quickly took out a treasure saber and attacked the black-robed man without any regard for his own safety. The 2 sides fought fiercely in the sky. Although the 3 divine emissaries had the advantage in numbers, they did their best to besiege the black-robed man. However, the black-robed man's strength was too strong and had reached the 9th stage of the tribulation passing realm. He easily withstood the attacks of the 3 divine envoys and only used a dozen moves to injure the 3 divine envoys. Chapter 1733. Bam, 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 bam. Black light blades and palm shadows that blotted out the sky hit the 3 divine envoys one after another, causing a loud explosion. The 3 divine envoys were sent flying, their bodies splattered with blood as they let out painful cries. However, the 3 of them had strong willpower. They ignored their injuries and waved their swords at the black-robed man. During this time, the purple-robed divine envoy took the time to send a message to the Luotian mountain for help. Previously at the northern border, the 3 of them had already suffered heavy injuries when they killed the 10,000 skeletons and rescued the blood skull. Now that they had not recovered from their injuries and only retained 60% to 70% of their combat strength, how could they be a match for the black-robed man? In a short 100 breaths of time, the 2 sides had exchanged over 100 moves. The 3 gods' envoys were covered in wounds and blood was dripping from their wounds. The purple-robed divine envoy's injuries were the most serious. His entire right arm had been cut off and there was a bowl-sized bloody hole in his chest. His internal organs were clearly visible. Divine Envoy Du and Divine Envoy Lu were also very miserable. There were at least 30 wounds on their bodies. Even the top of their heads and faces had several bone-deep wounds. The 3 of them were rapidly weakening. Let alone defeating the black-robed man, they could not even tie him down. As for the mysterious black-robed man, he was still unscathed and his strength was still unparalleled. The 2 sides temporarily stopped fighting and faced each other high in the sky. The 3 divine envoys spread out and pointed their swords at the black-robed man. They stared at him with hatred. "Damn demon, who are you? Why are you hiding in the ice crystal coffin?" Divine Envoy Du asked angrily. The black-robed man stood quietly in the sky. His entire body was shrouded in a hazy black fog, which made him seem even more mysterious and powerful. Under the black cloak, the pair of dark purple eyes flashed with a mocking sneer. There's no harm in telling you. I am Xiao Ming, one of the 36 demon monarchs, ranked 5th. I hid in the ice crystal coffin to give you a surprise and give you a piece of advice. The black-robed Xiao Ming's voice was very dry and hoarse, like 2 pieces of dead wood rubbing against each other. It was extremely uncomfortable to hear. The 3 divine envoys immediately frowned. Their faces became very gloomy. 36 demon monarchs? Ranked 5th? Divine Envoy Du suddenly thought of something and asked in a deep voice, "You are called Xiao Ming? What is your relationship with Xiao Yi?" "That's Benjuan's elder brother." Xiao Ming replied coldly. Willow God Emissary cursed with a heart full of hatred, "You 2 brothers are devils who deserve to die. You deserve to be hacked into pieces." Xiao Ming immediately sneered. Cut him into pieces? What a great idea. This monarch has decided to fulfill your wish and let you taste the feeling of being cut into pieces. The purple-robed messenger was the leader of the 3. He did not waste time with Xiao Ming. He asked in a deep voice, "What do you mean by the advice you just gave?" Xiao Ming looked at him coldly and said, "My race has been dormant in the North Underworld Mountain for thousands of years. We are not afraid of the Luo River Divine Kingdom. We just want to preserve our strength. But now times have changed. The pain and calamity that the Luoshui divine nation inflicted on our race will be returned tenfold. Go back and tell your master to stop provoking my race. Otherwise, the Luoshui divine nation will not be able to bear the revenge of the North Underworld Mountain. Xiao Ming's tone was filled with an iron-blooded domineering aura and thick killing intent. The three divine envoys' faces were filled with anger, and their eyes were filled with rage as they opened their mouths to curse. Bastard! How audacious! You don't know life from death. How dare you threaten the Luoshui divine nation with just the power of the North Underworld Mountain? A mere ghost race dares to be so arrogant. Our Luoshui divine lord is merciful and did not kill all of you. That's why the ghost race is struggling at death's door. Since the ghost race doesn't know life from death, just wait to be razed to the ground by the divine nation's army. Xiao Ming did not bother to refute and did not waste time with the three messengers. This monarch has delivered the message. You can all die now. As he spoke, Xiao Ming raised his palms and released a bloody light that covered the sky and earth, spreading in all directions. Demonic blood purgatory. In the blink of an eye, endless bloody light enveloped a radius of 100 miles, turning the world into a sea of blood. This area was sealed, completely turning into a blood-colored world. In the sea of blood, huge waves surged to the sky. White bones floated up and down. It was as terrifying as purgatory on earth. The three messengers were drowned by the sea of blood and were suppressed by a powerful force. They struggled desperately in the sea of blood, unable to break free. The prosperous blue-rich city was also mostly submerged by the sea of blood. The towering ancient city walls collapsed and disintegrated in the sea of blood, turning into countless bricks and dregs. Rows upon rows of buildings, tall buildings and palaces rapidly melted in the sea of blood, turning into mud and dust. Hundreds of thousands of common people were also corroded by the sea of blood. Their bodies rapidly corroded and festered, turning into white bones. Even though the common people of Blue Rich City were all martial artists, the majority had strength above the origin core realm. However, martial artists below the Tribulation Transcendence realm were unable to resist the corrosion of the blood purgatory. Even Essence Soul realm geniuses and powerhouses could only struggle for a moment before their lives were taken, turning into white skeletons. In the entire Blue Rich City, there were only two Tribulation Transcendence realm powerhouses. They were precisely the City Lord and a certain large family's ancestor. But these two powerhouses only had strength at the second and third level Tribulation Transcendence realm. They bitterly persisted in the sea of blood for 7 to 8 minutes before their physical bodies were destroyed. Their primordial spirits were killed by Xiao Ming very quickly. In a short 7 to 8 minutes, more than half of Blue Rich City was destroyed, turning into a pile of ruins. All of the city walls and buildings turned into rubble and dregs, sinking into the sea of blood. More than 700,000 martial artists and common people were all annihilated, turning into white skeletons that piled up like a mountain. The flesh, blood, essence and souls of these common people were all devoured by Xiao Ming, greatly increasing his magic power. In the blood purgatory, blood waves surged to the sky. Dense white bones floated, terrifying to the extreme. 2 of the 3 messengers were also killed. Divine Emissary Willow was killed by Xiao Ming. Before he died, he was even hacked into pieces, his physical body twisted into dregs by the Devil Blade. Even his essence soul was also destroyed and devoured by Xiao Ming using a secret art. Divine Emissary Du also died. He was killed by Xiao Ming using a Devil Path secret art, body and soul annihilated. Only the purple-robed Divine Emissary survived. It was not that he was powerful, but that Xiao Ming spared his life and did not kill him. But he also suffered extremely cruel torture. His hands and feet were chopped off and his essence soul was severely injured. He was already on the verge of death. Xiao Ming stood above the sea of blood and looked down at him from above. He said in a cold tone, "This lord spared your lowly life and let you go back to pass on the message. This massacre was a warning from North Underworld Mountain. If the Luoshui Divine Kingdom dared to invade North Underworld Mountain again, the next time the ones to be slaughtered would not be just 700,000 people." Chapter 1734. On Luoshan Mountain, Grandma Long, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yao were waiting patiently. It was already close to noon, but the 3 divine envoys had yet to return. The sky outside the main hall was overcast, and a layer of haze shrouded their hearts. They had a bad premonition. After keeping silent for a long time, Yunyao couldn't help but ask, Grandma Long, according to the time, the 3 divine envoys should have returned, right? Why are they still nowhere to be seen? Could they have been delayed by something on the way? Grandma Long had the same thoughts and worries, but she kept her composure and nodded slightly. Perhaps. Let's wait a little longer. The main hall quietened down again. Unknowingly, 15 minutes had passed. Suddenly, a stream of light flew from the sky and penetrated the gray clouds into the main hall. Swish. The stream of light flashed and flew to the front of Grandma Long. Grandma Long felt something and reached out to grab the spirit light in her palm. The light dispersed and a message jade slip appeared in her palm. She frowned and used her divine senses to check the message in the jade slip. Tianxia and Yunyao were also awakened. They turned to look at her with a puzzled expression. When Grandma Long finished reading the contents of the jade slip, she instantly frowned, and her expression became serious and cold. Not good. Something happened. Grandma Long yelled and kept the jade slip. She stood up and flew out of the main hall. Tianxia and Yunyao hurriedly followed. As they flew out, they asked, Granny Long, what happened? On the way back, the 3 divine envoys were attacked by the ghost race experts near Lanfeng City. As she spoke, Grandma Long came out of the main hall, took out a heaven fate ship and brought them into the flying ship. She steered the flying ship and rushed to Lanfeng City as fast as a stream of light. In her anxiety, she used all her strength and pushed the speed of the heaven fate ship to the limit. It only took her 2 hours to cover the distance of 100,000 kilometers. The prowess of a martial saint expert was undoubtedly displayed. Swish. An icy blue stream of light pierced through the sky like a thunderbolt. 2 hours later, the heaven fate ship finally arrived above Lanfeng City. After Granny Long put away the flying boat, she, Tianxia, and Yunyao appeared in the sky at the same time. The 3 of them stood high up in the sky and looked down at the scene below. Below them was a boundless plain with lush green grass. Dozens of miles away was an ancient and majestic city. However, the city that was supposed to be flourishing and prosperous had now been reduced to ruins. 80% of the cities within a radius of 100 miles had been turned into ruins. The ancient and majestic city walls rose upon rows of buildings, and those majestic palaces were all reduced to rubble. The ground was covered with broken bricks and all kinds of messy debris. In some of the ruins piled up like mountains, some skeletons could be seen occasionally. The ground was dark red and emitted a thick smell of blood. Thick demonic qi and the pungent smell of blood still lingered in the sky within 100 miles. The sky above Lanfeng City was covered by a thick layer of blood-red clouds. Even when the wind blew, it did not disperse. What a tragic scene. In the entire Lanfeng City, only a corner, about 20% of the area, was still intact. The city walls and buildings in that area were all intact. The hundreds of thousands of martial artists and commoners living in it also survived by luck. But everyone was scared silly. Terrified to the extreme, they abandoned the city and fled, scattering on the vast plain. For 1,000 years, Lanfeng City had been peaceful. Such a terrifying disaster had never happened. To those martial artists and commoners, this was a disaster they had never experienced before. Granny Long, Tianxia, and Yunyao were stunned on the spot after seeing the scene of Lanfeng City clearly. Their faces became incomparably ugly. Damn it! We were still a step too late. Granny Long's face was livid with anger. Her eyes surged with killing intent. Tianxia also revealed a murderous look. He yelled in a cold tone, such a huge city, nearly 1 million commoners were actually destroyed. Yunyao was angry and puzzled. She could not help but ask, what happened here? How many powerhouses did the demon clan dispatch to cause such a tragic scene? While talking, the 3 of them released their divine senses to explore the ruins of Lanfeng City, hoping to find clues. Granny Long's divine sense covered a radius of 200 miles, searching for the traces of the 3 divine envoys. Lanfeng City was destroyed and hundreds of thousands of commoners were missing. This made her furious. But she knew that only by finding the 3 divine envoys as soon as possible could she know what happened. After about 100 breaths of time, her divine sense suddenly detected a familiar aura on the grassland 100 miles away from the ruins of Lanfeng City. It was a low mound covered by a lush forest. The familiar aura came from the forest. It was a little weak and flashed away. Granny Long teleported without hesitation. Swish. Her figure flickered a few times and she came to the mound and entered the dense forest. Her divine sense spread out like mercury and enveloped the entire mound. Soon she discovered that a purple-robed man covered in blood and wounds was hiding 300 meters below the ground. The purple-robed man was one of the divine envoys of Luotian Mountain. Surnamed Mo, Granny Long hurriedly used a secret technique and waved her palm to send a 5-colored stream of light into the depths of the ground. The 5-colored stream of light turned into a giant palm and wrapped divine envoy Mo, rescuing him from the ground. When Granny Long saw the condition of divine envoy Mo's injuries, she immediately sucked in a breath of cold air and felt a chill on her back. Divine envoy Mo was lying on the ground on the verge of death. His whole body was soaked in blood and mixed with the soil, making him look like a bloody clay figurine. His arms and legs had been chopped off, revealing the white bone stubble. His chest, back and waist were densely covered with bloody holes, and his internal organs were flowing out. Even his cheeks and head were beyond recognition. He no longer looked like a human. It was a miracle that Divine Envoy Mo's body was still alive. Divine Envoy Mo, what happened? Who injured you like this? Granny Long stared at Divine Envoy Mo with burning eyes and asked with gritted teeth. Divine Envoy Mo was lying on the ground, twitching silently. His consciousness was blurred. When he heard Granny Long's voice, he was stunned for a moment before replying in a hoarse voice. It's the demon monarch, Xiaoming. He lurked in Blitzkull. There was a bloody hole in his throat, and when he spoke his voice was muffled. He had to make a great effort to speak every word. Granny Long roughly understood what he meant and quickly comforted him. I understand. You don't have to worry. I'll heal you first. Chapter 1735. Granny Long was treating Divine Emissary Mo's wounds when Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao rushed over. Both of them were shocked to see Divine Emissary Mo in such a miserable state. However, they had already seen the cruelty of the devil race, so they were not surprised. Granny Long, let me treat Divine Emissary Mo. Yun Yao took the initiative to use her greenwood divine power to treat Divine Emissary Mo's wounds. The dark green greenwood divine power shrouded Divine Emissary Mo and had an immediate effect. The bloodstains on Divine Emissary Mo's body quickly dissipated, and his wounds healed quickly. In just an hour his wounds had mostly healed and his life force had stabilized. In a hurry, this was all Yun Yao could do. Divine Emissary Mo's injuries were too serious, and he still needed more than 10 years to fully recover. Including his hands and feet, it would take at least 10 years to grow back. Seeing that Divine Emissary Mo's breath had stabilized, Granny Long asked, Divine Emissary Mo, tell us what happened. Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Lu, where did they go? Divine Emissary Mo lay on the ground wearily and said in a low voice, we defeated the 10,000 skeleton demon at the border of the divine nation. After capturing the blood skeleton, we sealed it in the crystal coffin. The journey was safe and sound, but when we arrived near Lanfeng City, Demon Lord Xiaoming broke out of the coffin and almost destroyed the entire Heaven Fate ship. At that time, we realized that he had secretly possessed the blood skeleton when we were at the border of the divine nation. Xiaoming was too strong and we were no match for him. We couldn't stop him. Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Lu were killed by Xiaoming. Even half of Lanfeng City was destroyed by Xiaoming's blood purgatory sea. After listening to Divine Emissary Mo's words, Granny Long, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao frowned. Granny Long's face was ashen as she cursed, that bastard of the ghost race is so arrogant. He dared to hide in the crystal coffin and only attacked when we arrived at Lanfeng City. The ghost race deliberately destroyed Lanfeng City and massacred 700,000 people. This is a demonstration to us. Divine Emissary Mo's eyes were burning with rage as he said resentfully, that's right. Xiaoming killed 2 divine envoys and left me alive. He wanted me to pass on a message. He said that this was just a warning. If Scandinavia dared to invade Dark North Mountain again the next time, it would not be just 700,000 people who would be slaughtered. Xiaoming also said that the entire divine nations would not be able to withstand the wrath of Dark North Mountain. Grandma Long, who was already filled with anger, became even more furious after hearing Xiaoming's warning. Her entire body surged with killing intent. Damn it! To think that the Ghost Clan would be so arrogant, they really don't know what's good for them. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and suddenly thought of something and immediately reminded with a solemn expression, Grandma Long, since Xiaoming is so rampant, he must have something to rely on. This is no small matter. I'm afraid that the North Underworld Mountain has some kind of conspiracy. We need to think about it at length. If possible, I suggest that you report this matter to the Divine Master. Without waiting for him to finish, Grandma Long waved her hand with a firm expression and said in a resolute tone, "There's nothing to discuss. The Ghost Clan is courting death, and Scandinavia will not let them off easily. A mere Dark North Mountain, a small ghost clan, dares to talk nonsense and be so arrogant? No matter what conspiracy Dark North Mountain has, Luoshui Scandinavia is not afraid." After saying that, Grandma Long pointed to the ruins of Lanfeng City in the distance and ordered Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. "Tianxing, Yun Yao, you go to Lanfeng City first and stabilize the people. I will take Divine Emissary Mo back to Luoshan Mountain first. After settling him down, I will send someone to replace you. The most important thing now is to rebuild Lanfeng City and settle the people down so as not to spread the news and cause panic among the people." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao cupped their hands and said yes. Then Grandma Long left with Divine Emissary Mo and returned to Luoshan Mountain as fast as lightning. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao also left the forest and flew back to Lanfeng City to calm the panicked people. The two of them stayed in Lanfeng City and used their great divine abilities to clean up the ruins of the city. Hundreds of thousands of panicked cultivators and people gradually calmed down under the two's comfort. A day later, the two divine emissaries of Luoshan Mountain arrived with a large number of craftsmen and guards. The following reconstruction work was presided over and completed by the two divine emissaries. With the craftsmen of Luoshan Mountain, they would be able to rebuild Lanfeng City in the shortest time possible. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao left and rushed back to Luoshan Mountain. Luoshan Mountain, in the study of Grandma Long's residence. It was late at night and the light in the study was dim. It was pitch black outside the window. The atmosphere in the room was somewhat solemn. Grandma Long sat in front of the table with a grave expression. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao stood in front of her and asked her about the situation. "Grandma Long, how is Divine Emissary Mo? Where are Yu Wei's bones?" Grandma Long said expressionlessly, "Divine Emissary Mo is fine now. He entered the forbidden area in the back of the mountain to recuperate. It will be at least 10 years before he comes out. As for Yu Wei's bones, Divine Emissary Mo has already given them to me before he went into seclusion." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "In that case I can purify the blood skull at any time and bury Yu Wei's bones." Grandma Long waved her hand and said, "Don't worry about this matter. We'll talk about it tomorrow." Yun Yao glanced at her and asked, "Then why are you so worried, Grandma? Is it because of the demon race?" Grandma Long slightly nodded and looked at her and Ji Tianxing with deep eyes. She said in a grave tone, "Tianxing, Yun Yao, although I don't know where you came from or what you have experienced in the past, I can tell that you are from the demon race. You seem to know a lot about the ghost race in the North Underworld Mountain. You even know some secrets?" The corners of Ji Tianxing's mouth curled into a cold smile and he said in a playful tone, "Not only do the two of us know the Ghost Clan very well, we also hate them to the core and we are absolutely irreconcilable with them. Grandma Long, if you have any doubts or concerns, you can tell us directly. If we can answer them, we will tell you the truth." "Good." Grandma Long nodded and said with a solemn expression, "Divine Emissary Mo means that Demon Monarch Xiaoming is very cunning and very arrogant. He obviously came prepared. However, since ancient times, the ghost race has been hiding in the North Underworld Mountain for 10,000 years. They didn't dare to make an enemy out of the divine nations. In the past 10,000 years, the ghost race has been hiding in the North Underworld Mountain and almost didn't dare to show their faces. However, since 1,000 years ago, the ghost race changed their low profile and dared to leave the North Underworld Mountain to confront the divine nations' armies. In recent years, the ghost race has become more and more arrogant and their activities have become more frequent. They have frequently invaded the borders of the divine nations. Moreover, a large number of ghost race experts have sneaked into the divine nations' territories to cause trouble. Chapter 1736. Granny Long's meaning was obvious. On Xinwu continent, the three divine kingdoms had always reigned supreme. Aside from the three divine kingdoms, there were many other powers and races on the continent, and Dark North Mountain was just one of them. However, these races and powers were very weak and they had to keep a low profile to survive. They did not dare to oppose the three divine kingdoms. For the past 10,000 years, the ghosts of Dark North Mountain had remained dormant. However, in the past 1,000 years the ghosts had become more active, and they had become bolder and bolder. They even dared to challenge the Luoshui divine kingdom. In recent years the ghost clan had become even more unscrupulous, and their actions had become even more arrogant. Large numbers of ghost powerhouses had invaded the borders and infiltrated the Luoshui divine kingdom, causing chaos everywhere. At this point Xiaoming had infiltrated the vicinity of Luoshui Mountain and destroyed half of Lanfeng City, massacring 700,000 people. This was a great provocation and the Luoshui divine kingdom would not let it go. However, Granny Long could not understand where the ghosts had gotten their confidence from. Were they not afraid that the Luoshui martial god would personally lead an army to flatten Dark North Mountain? Ji Tianxing understood Granny Long's doubts and he explained without hesitation, Granny Long, this is a very simple question. In ancient times the demons massacred the world and incurred the wrath of all races. They were besieged by various powerhouses and gods. In the end the demons were destroyed and many powerhouses and demon gods fell. Many races withered away and most of the gods fell or died in battle. After the ancient war the races that were lucky enough to survive had to recuperate. The demons could only hide in a corner and did not dare to show their faces again, lest they be killed by the other races. Speaking up to this point, Ji Tianxing pointed to the north and sneered, "Those despicable and cunning devils have holed up in the North Underworld Mountain and changed their name to the Ghost Clan, hoping to deceive the world. After tens of thousands of years, they had become strong enough. However, they were still evil and greedy demons, and they could not restrain the bloodthirst and slaughter in their bones, which made them restless. They thought that the tens of thousands of years had erased their history, and that the various races had forgotten their sins. Thus they began to test the waters, moving out of Dark North Mountain and expanding into the outside world. Most importantly, they did not have a leader in the past. They did not have a martial god to oversee them, nor did they have a spiritual leader. But now with a common leader they had become more unified and united. Thus their ultimate goal must be to destroy the various divine kingdoms, slaughter everyone and occupy the entire Shenwu continent. Ji Tianxing's tone was very firm, full of hatred and killing intent. Granny Long was stunned. She looked at him in disbelief, her eyes shining brightly. She had never thought that the origins of the Ghost Clan in Dark North Mountain would be so complicated. In her impression, the weak and feeble Ghost Clan actually had such great ambitions. After a long while she came back to her senses and asked in disbelief, "Tianxing, how did you know about this?" Ji Tianxing explained, "Granny Long, although I can't tell you why, I can guarantee with my character that this is absolutely true. If you don't believe me, you can report everything I said to the Divine Master without missing a single word." Granny Long was stunned for a moment before she gently shook her head. "No, of course I believe you. As a matter of fact, I do have some understanding of these ancient histories and secrets. It's just that I don't understand it as well as you do, and I don't know the ins and outs of the matter clearly." "Right. You said that the Ghost Clan of Dark North Mountain. No, the Devil Clan has a common leader? What's going on here? Aren't the supreme leaders of Dark North Mountain the great devil sages?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and explained, "Those great devil sages can only be considered the strongest in Dark North Mountain. They are definitely not the leaders of the Devil Clan. In ancient times, the Devil Clan worshipped the primogenitor demon god as their leader. During the Great War of the Gods, the primogenitor demon god was annihilated by the gods of various races and fell on the battlefield. However, the primogenitor demon god left behind a trace of its soul, and after 30,000 years, it was reborn with the help of the Devil Clan's powerhouses. Now that the primogenitor demon god has returned to Dark North Mountain, the great devil sages, 36 devil monarchs, and countless other Devil Clan members worship it as their leader." Granny Long was stunned and said in disbelief, "The primogenitor demon god? The primogenitor of the Devil Clan. It fell in ancient times and after 30,000 years, it was reborn? If that's the case, doesn't that mean that the Devil Clan in Dark North Mountain also has a martial god?" This news had a huge impact on Granny Long and she was filled with anxiety. She only wanted to report this news to martial god Luo Shui immediately. Ji Tianxing quickly waved his hand and explained, "Granny Long, don't worry too much. The primogenitor demon god has just been reborn, and its strength is still very weak. It's impossible for it to recover to the martial god realm. However, I estimate that it has at least recovered to the crossing calamity realm and is not far from the martial sage realm. After all, it is the primogenitor of the devil clan, a former god. It shouldn't take long for it to recover to the martial god realm. You still have to report this matter to the Divine Master and let him make the decision. Granny Long was slightly relieved and said with a worried expression, in ancient times when the primogenitor demon god was at its peak, its strength definitely surpassed the martial god realm. If it recuperates in Dark North Mountain, it will probably recover to the martial god realm in 8 to 10 years. If that's the case, Dark North Mountain will have the capital to contend with the 3 divine kingdoms. No wonder Dark North Mountain is so arrogant, daring to sneak into the divine kingdoms and destroy Lanfeng City as a warning. By now Granny Long had completely understood the situation. She knew that she was powerless to solve this matter, so she was prepared to report this information to martial god Luo Shui. Tianqing, there's no time to lose. I'll report this to the Divine Master now. Wait here for a moment. After I'm done, I'll purify the blood skull. After saying that, Granny Long got up and left the study. She entered the secret room and used a secret technique to report the news. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stayed in the study and waited patiently. After an hour, Granny Long finished reporting and returned to the secret room. Ji Tianqing saw her grave expression and asked, Granny Long, what did the Divine Master say? The Divine Master already knows. She has her own decision. We just have to wait for orders. Granny Long replied in a low voice. Then she took out an ice blue box from her interspatial ring and placed it on the table in front of her. This palm-sized box was the shrunken ice crystal coffin. A blood-red skeleton lay quietly in the ice crystal coffin, looking nothing out of the ordinary. Tianqing, you can cast your technique now. Granny Long waved her hand and sent a majestic dermic power into the ice crystal coffin. Chapter 1737. Ji Tianqing reached out and opened the lid of the crystal coffin. He stood beside the crystal coffin and carefully observed the blood skeleton inside for a moment. The blood skeleton lay motionless on the ground. Its whole body flickered with a dark red light and emitted a powerful evil aura. Ji Tianqing raised his palms and silently activated the power of the heaven-mending orb. 2 beams of holy white light were released and injected into the crystal coffin. Immediately, the blood skeleton was enveloped by the holy white light. Countless streams of blood-red air gushed out of its body and quickly dissipated under the purification of the white light. The blood skeleton was originally sealed. Now that its demon aura and power were rapidly dissipating, it was immediately awakened. It struggled with all its might and its body shook violently. Blood-red flames lit up in its sunken eye sockets. Seeing this, Granny Long was on guard. She was afraid that it would rush out of the crystal coffin and attack people. However, it turned out that she was worried for nothing. The holy white light enveloped the blood skeleton. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't break free. As time passed, more and more blood and demon aura gushed out of its body. Its power was also quickly dissipating. After a short 100 breaths, the lower half of its body changed from blood red to a normal grayish-white color. After another 15 minutes, the demon aura on its upper body completely disappeared. The scarlet flames in its eyes also extinguished. The entire blood skeleton's demon aura and blood aura had disappeared. It had become a lifeless gray skeleton. Only then did Ji Tianqing stop and withdraw the holy white light. All right, Yu Wei's body has been purified. She can be buried in peace. Hearing this, Granny Long released her divine sense and carefully examined Yu Wei's body. After confirming that the body was normal and didn't contain any demon aura, a gratified expression appeared on her face. Tianqing, your methods are indeed unimaginable. Yu Wei's body has been refined for thousands of years. The demon aura has long been deeply ingrained in it. Even I couldn't get rid of it. You actually purified Yu Wei's body in such a short time. It's simply incredible. As she spoke, Granny Long waved her hand and closed the lid of the crystal coffin. Now that I've finally completed the task given by the Divine Lord, I'll bury Yu Wei's body today. I hope she can also reincarnate smoothly. After that, Granny Long shrunk the crystal coffin countless times and put it away. 3 days later, Yu Wei's funeral was held on Luotian Mountain. Yu Wei's body was buried in the back of the mountain, in a very quiet place where no one would disturb her. Granny Long presided over the funeral, which was attended by several oracles and many disciples of God. Although the funeral was relatively simple, the atmosphere was solemn and solemn. It could be considered as an explanation and comfort for Yue Wei. After the funeral ended, the Luotian mountain returned to its peaceful state. In the next few days, Granny Long and the oracles were busy with official business. According to the orders of the Luoshui martial god, the divine envoys had to supervise the various empires to search for traces of the demon race's activities within their borders. Once the demons were discovered, the empires could surround and kill them without asking for any reason. In addition, the various empires also followed the orders of the Luoshui martial god and sent their elite armies to the northern border. The defense of the northern border of the Divine Kingdom was getting stronger day by day, especially in the area adjacent to the North Underworld Mountain, where a tight and powerful defense line had been established. All signs indicated that the Luoshui Divine Kingdom would not compromise with the North Underworld Mountain, or might come soon. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao returned to their respective rooms and went into seclusion to cultivate. The previous events had made the two realize that the demons in the North Underworld Mountain were restless. It would not be long before the peace of the Xinwu continent was broken, and the situation would become chaotic. If chaos were to come, they would need to have enough strength to settle down, and only then would it be possible to kill the devil race. Unknowingly, half a month passed. Ji Tianxing had been in seclusion for 15 days, and his strength had finally reached the peak of the 9th level of the primordial spirit realm. Unfortunately, he could not sense the aura of a heavenly tribulation, and there was still a long time before he could break through to the tribulation transcendence realm. Yun Yao's strength had also increased greatly, and she had reached the peak of perfection. She could already sense the aura of a heavenly tribulation, and it would probably arrive within a month. On the morning of the 16th day, the Black Hawk and the Golden Dragon came to the doors of the two secret rooms and knocked on the doors to wake up Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing. Master, Granny Long has sent someone to summon all the God Apostles to the Great Council Hall. He has something important to announce. Master Ji, Granny Long has ordered. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao heard the news, they ended their cultivation and opened their eyes. Granny Long is summoning everyone to the Great Council Hall? Is there something important? Is it related to the demons in the North Underworld Mountain? Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows in doubt as he secretly speculated. With a heart full of doubt and anticipation, he got up and walked out of the secret room and entered the room. Yun Yao had just finished her cultivation and was about to stand up from the throne when she suddenly felt her vision blur. She staggered and almost fell to the ground. A strange feeling suddenly surged up from her abdomen, causing her face to turn pale, and she could not help but retch twice. Fortunately, the uncomfortable feeling disappeared in a flash. She immediately returned to normal. Subconsciously, she touched her aching abdomen and murmured to herself, "Strange, I've already refined the longevity divine pearl. Both my body and soul have been strengthened. Why do I feel uncomfortable all of a sudden? Could it be that the heavenly tribulation is affecting me negatively?" A tinge of doubt and worry flashed across her eyes. Ji Tianxing's voice came from outside the secret room. He was calling for her. Therefore, she suppressed the doubt in her heart and put it aside. She quickly got up and walked out of the secret room. After a while, the two of them left the Cloud Water Palace together and rushed to the Great Council Hall. When the two of them arrived at the Great Council Hall, the sun was rising and the sun was shining brightly. Two teams of majestic guards in golden armor were lined up on the steps outside the Great Council Hall. They looked very solemn and dignified. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao stepped into the Great Council Hall, they saw that the other 8 God Apostles had already arrived and were standing quietly in the Great Council Hall. On the throne in the north of the Great Council Hall, Grandma Long, who was dressed in splendid clothes, sat upright. Her face and aura were noble and dignified. As for the other God Apostles, they had already left the Luotian mountain to deal with the affairs of the various empires. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao entered the Great Council Hall. After bowing to Grandma Long, they stood on the left and right sides of the Great Council Hall, facing each other. When Grandma Long saw that everyone was present, she said in a solemn tone, "Today I have gathered everyone here to announce an important news. As early as half a month ago, I received news that the Heaven Extinction God Nation had already sent an envoy to the Luotian mountain. Just now, the envoy from the Heaven Extinction God Nation sent a message saying that they are about to arrive at the Luotian Mountain. I don't know why the Heaven Extinction God Nation suddenly sent an envoy to visit. Chapter 1738. Among the three divine nations, Tianzhu Divine Nation was the most powerful. This was something that everyone knew. All the disciples of God in the hall knew this very well. The relationship between Luoxue Divine Nation and Tianzhu Divine Nation wasn't close, but they weren't hostile either. Tianzhu Divine Nation had sent a delegation to visit Luotian Mountain. This was an exchange between the two divine nations, sacred and solemn. Luoxue Divine Nation had to treat it with caution. Granny Long had gathered everyone to announce this news, to let everyone know the importance of this matter, to prevent any mistakes. Granny Long had already given the order to the guards and maids of Luotian Mountain. At this moment, the guards were already dressed majestically, setting up a ceremonial array at the peak of the mountain. The maids had also prepared flower baskets and musical instruments to welcome the arrival of Tianzhu Divine Nation's delegation. Granny Long, Ji Tianxing and the rest waited in the hall for an hour. At this moment, a colorful streamer appeared in the sky, flying over from the horizon as fast as lightning. Following that dazzling streamer, there was a majestic aura that swept over from the sky. The guards on the peak of Luotian Mountain were immediately alarmed, and they all turned to look at the sky. A flying boat that was hundreds of meters long was wrapped in the colorful flowing light. The flying boat was gilded with gold and it looked like a lifelike dragon, looking very sacred and noble. On the left and right sides of the dragon-shaped flying boat, there were two mysterious emblems, which was the symbol of Tianzhu Divine Nation. The guards of Luotian Mountain immediately understood that it was Tianzhu Divine Nation's flying boat. A guard captain quickly ran into the meeting hall to report the news to Granny Long, reporting to Granny Long, Tianzhu Divine Nation's delegation has arrived. Granny Long also noticed the movement in the sky and felt a powerful aura. She immediately stood up and ordered the god's disciples, "Everyone, follow me to welcome the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation's diplomatic mission." After saying that, she led the 10 god disciples out of the hall, and came to the square outside the hall. Everyone came out of the hall and stood in the spacious square. At the same time, Tianzhu Divine Nation's flying boat arrived above Luotian Mountain, and slowly descended. When they got closer, everyone could clearly see the style of the flying boat and the emblem of the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation. When the flying boat descended to a height of 1,000 feet above the ground, it was put away with a flash of brilliance. Then 4 powerhouses with different figures appeared. The leader was a tall and sturdy old man with white hair and beard. This old man was at the 8th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. He wore a dark golden robe, and his thin face had a dignified and cold temperament. Following closely behind him was a young man in his 30s. He was only at the 7th level of the Essence Spirit realm. The young man was dressed in a blue robe. He was tall and straight, and there was a hint of arrogance between his eyebrows. Apart from the old man and the young man, the other 2 were middle-aged experts in the Crossing Calamity realm. They wore black armor and were obviously the accompanying guards. Seeing this, Granny Long and the rest of the god's disciples were stunned. Then a weird expression appeared on their faces. This is the diplomatic mission of the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation? Why do I feel like something is wrong? Why are there only 4 people in a diplomatic mission? And 2 of them are guards? The Heaven Extinction Divine Nation only sent 2 people, one old and one young, to visit the Luotian Mountain. Isn't this too sloppy? How dare they call it a diplomatic mission with just 2 people? The god's disciples were discussing secretly as they sized up the people from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation. After a while, the 4 emissaries from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation landed in the square outside the hall. Hundreds of guards and maidservants stood in the square, forming a straight path in the middle to welcome the arrival of the 4 emissaries. The guards held swords and spears as they bowed in unison. The maidservants played musical instruments and scattered colorful flowers with baskets of flowers. The white-haired old man and the blue-robed young man walked across the square calmly and came before Granny Long. Although Granny Long was a little worried, she did not show it. She looked at them solemnly and bowed. The Luotian Mountain welcomes the emissaries from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation. The white-haired old man and the blue-robed young man bowed in return and said calmly, "The second guardian of the Heaven Extinction Mountain by Qing, is here with God's disciple Meng Fei. Hearing this, everyone knew the identity of the white-haired old man. He was the second guardian of the Heaven Extinction Mountain. As for the blue-robed young man, he was one of the God's disciples of the Heaven Extinction Mountain. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao looked at each other and saw the doubts in each other's eyes. Yiqing Luo and Lu Xiaoming looked at each other and could not help but discuss with each other. The people from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation are too insincere, right? They said they would send a diplomatic mission, but there are only 2 of them. Moreover, they are not Guardian Yen of the Heaven Extinction Mountain, nor the number 1 God's disciple Huang Qi. Yiqing Luo said as she curled her lips. Lu Xiaoming nodded in agreement and said, "In my opinion, the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation is looking down on us. They did not take this matter to heart and just found 2 people to deal with it. I don't know what these 2 fellows want to do by coming all the way to the Luotian Mountain in the name of a diplomatic mission." Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes and asked on a whim, "Xiaomeng, do you think these 2 are here to propose marriage? For example, that Meng Fei, he has taken a fancy to a female disciple of our Luotian Mountain, so he specially came." Cough cough. Lu Xiaoming was stunned and almost choked on her saliva. "Senior Sister Qing Luo, why did the people from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation come to our Luotian Divine Nation to propose marriage? Is there something wrong with his brain? Besides, the only female disciples who participated in the Divine Kingdom exchange were you, me, and eldest Senior Sister. Senior Sister already has a husband and only you and I are not married yet. Who do you think Meng Fei will take a fancy to?" Yiqing Luo revealed a mischievous smile and quietly extended a finger, pointing at Lu Xiaoming. Lu Xiaoming was embarrassed and her cheeks turned red. She spat and ignored Yiqing Luo. At this time, Granny Long and Bai Qing finished their small talk and led Bai Qing and Meng Fei to the conference hall. The 2 accompanying black-armored guards remained outside the door of the conference hall. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and the rest of the God's disciples followed them into the conference hall. Soon, Bai Qing and Granny Long took their seats in the conference hall. Granny Long sat on the main seat in the north, and Bai Qing sat on the main seat on the left. Meng Fei stood behind him. As for Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao and the rest, they stood in 2 rows in the conference hall. After both parties sat down, Granny Long asked directly, "Guardian Bai, the 2 of you came all the way to the Luotian Mountain with great effort. I guess you must have a heavy responsibility, right?" Granny Long's words sounded polite on the surface, but in fact they were sarcastic. Chapter 1739. Bai Qing didn't seem to understand the meaning of Granny Long's words. Her face was still calm. He lifted his chin slightly and said solemnly, "Grandma Long is right. I've been ordered to come here for a very important matter." Grandma Long raised her eyebrows and looked at Bai Qing meaningfully. "Oh, what is it? Protector Bai, please speak your mind. Please listen to me slowly." Bai Qing picked up the teacup and took a sip of the spiritual tea. Only then did she explain slowly, "A few months ago, our country's patrol team discovered traces of a divine beast outside the border and reported the news to the Heaven Extremes Mountain. Tianju Mountain sent experts and guards to investigate and found the trace of the divine beast, the glazed fire dragon. As everyone knows, the glazed fire dragon is an ancient divine beast, an extremely noble and rare divine dragon. Since ancient times, the dragon tribe has been extinct. There are less than 5 divine dragons left in the world. The experts and guards of the Heaven End Mountain quietly followed the glazed fire dragon and finally found its lair, which was in the vast ruins of God." Hearing this, Granny Long and the rest of the God's disciples were all shocked. They could not believe that there was a divine dragon in the ruins of God and it was a rare glazed fire dragon. Grandma Long could not help but ask, "Guardian Bai, where is the nest of the glazed fire dragon? What happened after that? Did you succeed?" Protector Bai smiled bitterly and shook his head. "The nest of the glazed fiery dragon is in the famous Fiery Mountain. That area was a sea of fire with a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. No one could enter it. The experts and guards of Tianju Mountain risked their lives to enter the Flaming Mountain, but they did not find the glazed fire dragon. Instead, they suffered heavy casualties. However, before they left, they found a piece of heavenly fire glazed gold in the underground mine of the Flaming Mountain." After that, Bai Qing took out a square sandalwood box from his space ring and placed it on the table in front of him. The box was exquisite and beautiful, revealing a luxurious and precious aura. In addition, there was a violent and hot aura hidden in the box as if it could explode at any time. Everyone looked at the sandalwood box and started to discuss as they looked at it carefully. Heavenly fire-colored glazed true gold? I've heard of this treasure before. It seems to be a top-notch gem that can only be found once in 1,000 years. Yes. This kind of rare gem can be used to forge and refine saint-level magic treasures. It's definitely a rare treasure. What are the people of the Heavenly Extreme Mountain doing with the heavenly flame-colored glazed true gold? Bai Qing saw that everyone was interested and he couldn't help but smile. He stroked his beard and said, "Granny Long, this seat wants to give this piece of heaven fire-colored glass true gold as a gift to Luotian Mountain. This is the goodwill of the Heaven Extreme Mountain, and it also represents the intentions of the Heaven Extreme God Lord. I hope that Granny Long can kindly accept it." After saying that, Bai Qing beckoned to Meng Fei, who was behind her. Meng Fei immediately understood what he meant. He held the sandalwood box with both hands and walked in front of Granny Long, respectfully presenting it to her. All the god's disciples were stunned. Obviously, they did not expect this to happen. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were also surprised and frowned. Granny Long also had the same doubts. She frowned on the spot and said with a serious face, "Guardian Bai, as the saying goes, one should not accept a reward without any effort. Our Luotian Mountain will not accept gifts casually. Moreover, this piece of heaven fire-colored glass true gold is a top-notch crafting material and a precious gem. Please take it back." However, Bai Qing shook her head and said with a smile, "Granny Long, this is a sincere gift from the Tianju Mountain. Please accept it." Granny Long saw that he insisted on giving the gift and guessed his intention. She couldn't help but smile and ask, "Guardian Bai, I'm afraid that you didn't come all the way to Luotian Mountain just to give the gift, right? There are other things, please tell me clearly. Otherwise I won't accept it." This. Bai Qing was a little embarrassed. After hesitating for a moment, he said with a smile, "As expected, nothing can be hidden from Granny Long's sharp eyes. Then I'll say it directly. This piece of heaven fire-colored glass true gold is indeed a gift from the Heaven Extreme Mountain to Luotian Mountain. However, we have a presumptuous request. We hope that Luotian Mountain can help us." Hearing this, Granny Long, Ji Tianxing and the others all had the same thought. As expected, Bai Qing has long planned this. Aha, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. This Bai Qing won't be easy to deal with. Granny Long looked at Bai Qing calmly and asked, "How does the Heaven Extreme Mountain need help?" "Very simple." Bai Qing smiled and said in a relaxed tone, "I've long heard that 1,000 years ago, God Lord Luotian had personally crafted a divine tool called reverse water. That divine tool contains the ultimate power of ice and water. It can extinguish 9 heavens' true fire and compete with the sun and moon. Therefore, the Heaven Extreme Mountain wants to borrow this divine tool from your country to suppress the boundless sea of fire and flame mountain and deal with the glass fire dragon." Before Bai Qing could finish her words, Granny Long's expression changed and she frowned. "Protector Bai, after God Lord Luotian crafted the reverse water sword, he has never used it in front of anyone. How does your country know about it so clearly?" "It seems that Protector Bai has done his homework before coming?" Bai Qing saw Granny Long's attitude and said, "Granny Long must be joking. God Lord Luotian is famous throughout the world, and the reverse water sword that he personally crafted is even more well known. Granny Long, please be at ease. The Heaven Extreme Mountain only wants to borrow the reverse water sword. After we attack Flame Mountain and capture the glass fire dragon, we will definitely return the reverse water sword and also give you a great reward." Before he could finish, Granny Long waved her hand and said, "There's no need to mention a great reward. The reverse water sword is a divine tool that the God Lord always carries with him. He will not easily show it to others, much less lend it to others. Furthermore, this old woman cannot make the decision. Please take back the gift." Meng Fei had been holding the treasure box in front of Granny Long, unable to advance or retreat. Seeing Granny Long refuse, he turned to look at Bai Qing. Bai Qing also frowned and said unhappily, "Granny Long, our Heaven Extreme Divine Nation has always been on good terms with your country. We can be considered old friends. Even if there are disputes on the border between our two countries and some medicine mountains and mineral veins, we have always followed the principle of peace and negotiated with your country. But now that we have a problem and want to borrow a magic treasure from your country, you simply refused. Isn't that a bit too unreasonable? It's fine if you don't accept the gift, but you should ask God Lord Zhou Xian about borrowing the reverse water sword. Granny Long also frowned and looked at him. She said in a serious tone, Protector Bai, what do you mean? Chapter 1740. Granny Long's tone was low and cold with a hint of anger. Bai Qing did not care. He smiled and waved his hand. Granny Long, you worry too much. Our Heaven's End holy nation is the head of the 3 holy nations, and we have always respected others. People respect us, we will respect them tenfold. This is the principle of our nation. However, since your country is so heartless, I will definitely report this matter to God Lord Tianju without changing a single detail. As for what happens in the future, it's not something we can control. After he finished speaking, he leaned back on the wide chair and picked up the teacup to savor the tea. Even though he didn't say anything further, his expression was filled with a wisp of arrogance, and he seemed rather confident. Obviously, he knew that Granny Long would not dare to make a decision on her own, much less offend the Heaven's End holy nation. Meng Fei also held the sandalwood box with the heavenly fire glazed true gold and returned to Bai Qing's side calmly. Granny Long's eyes were gloomy. Her expression was cold as she pondered, weighing the pros and cons. Everyone was silent and the hall fell into silence. Bai Qing put on an attitude that said, I'm not afraid of you not knowing what's good for you. Meng Fei was also a little overbearing and secretly proud of himself. Especially when he saw the ugly expressions of the god's disciples in the hall, he was even more proud. Suddenly his gaze fell on Ji Tianxing. His body stiffened and the smile on his face disappeared. Aren't you Ji Tianxing? Meng Fei's pupils shrank and his face was full of disbelief as he exclaimed. The silence in the hall was broken and everyone turned to look at Meng Fei. Bai Qing, who was resting with his eyes closed, was also awakened by Meng Fei's words. He frowned in confusion. What Ji Tianxing? Meng Fei, don't talk nonsense. Bai Qing was waiting for Granny Long to submit. When he saw Meng Fei speak, he scolded him in a low voice. Meng Fei was too shocked and could not help but explain. Second guardian, he is Ji Tianxing, the #1 genius with the most dazzling performance in the Holy Nation Exchange. What? Bai Qing came to a sudden realization, and suddenly revealed a face full of surprise. But I heard that he's the #1 genius of the vast divine nation. Why would he be here? Disciple. Doesn't know either. Meng Fei was startled for a moment. Then he shook his head in confusion. When he came to his senses, he frowned at Ji Tianxing and asked, Ji Tianxing, why are you here instead of in the vast divine kingdom? Could it be that you betrayed the vast god nation and joined the Luo River god nation for Yunyao? Meng Fei's words angered all the disciples of God present and they glared at him as if they had a common enemy. Ji Tianxing walked out of the crowd and stood in the middle of the hall. He looked at him with a cold smile and said, Little brother, please think before you speak. Firstly, even Huang Qi has to call me senior brother Ji. What right do you have to call me by my name? Secondly, I left the vast divine kingdom to reunite with my wife Yunyao with the consent of the vast divine martial god and the Luo River martial god. This can't be considered a betrayal. Lastly, if you speak rudely again, I don't mind throwing you out. Meng Fei was stunned by this series of words. He stared at Ji Tianxing with his mouth agape. When he came to his senses, he was embarrassed and angry. He shouted angrily, Ji Tianxing, I only asked a few questions out of concern. How dare you be so rude? Is this how you're raised? Is this how the Luo River god nation treats its guests? Haha. Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said mockingly, You don't deserve to talk to me about manners, and you don't deserve to talk about hospitality. This is because you're not a guest in my eyes. As he spoke, he waved his hand and a dazzling golden light turned into a giant palm that wrapped around Meng Fei. Before Meng Fei could react, he was caught by the golden palm and thrown to the entrance of the hall by Ji Tianxing. Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, Meng Fei was thrown out of the hall. He drew an arc in the air and crashed into the square outside the hall. The guards and maids in the square all stared at Meng Fei dumbfounded. Meng Fei crawled up in a sorry state. When he saw the strange expressions and gazes of the crowd, he was so embarrassed that he wanted to kill someone. Originally, when he and Bai Qing came to visit the Luotian mountain, It could be said that they were full of themselves and wanted to show off. However, not long after he entered the hall, he was thrown out of the hall by Ji Tianxing because he said 2 wrong words. This was simply too embarrassing. He had never been so humiliated in his life. Until now, he still didn't dare to believe that Ji Tianxing had the guts to attack him in public. Ji Tianxing was so arrogant. Wasn't he afraid of angering the Heaven-End God Nation and bringing disaster to the Luo River God Nation? For a moment, Meng Fei was stunned in the square, not knowing what to do. It was impossible to return to the hall. He couldn't afford to lose face. It was also unrealistic to leave just like that. Bai Qing was still in the hall, waiting to talk business with Granny Long. The great conference hall was still quiet. Everyone was shocked and looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. Granny Long and the god's disciples didn't expect Ji Tianxing to be so domineering and throw Meng Fei out of the hall. However, the god's disciples came back to their senses and applauded secretly. They felt that it was very satisfying. Bai Qing was also stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. Originally, he was confident that he would win and take the initiative in the negotiation. He was determined to get the reverse water divine sword. However, he didn't expect Ji Tianxing to be so arrogant. He didn't play by the rules and humiliated Meng Fei in front of everyone. As a result, when Ji Tianxing attacked, Bai Qing didn't even react in time. He looked down on the people of Luoshui Holy Nation from the bottom of his heart. He thought that the people of Luoshui Holy Nation didn't have the guts to resist, let alone offend the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation. However, Ji Tianxing's actions gave him a loud slap in the face. Swoosh! Bai Qing couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up with a pale face and stared at Ji Tianxing angrily. Granny Long, is this how the Luoshui Holy Nation treats its guests? Does your nation not discipline such an arrogant and rude god's disciple? I'll remember how your god's disciple humiliated my god's disciple. Granny Long, if you don't give me a reasonable explanation, I won't let this matter go. The reason why Bai Qing was angry was that Meng Fei was thrown out of the hall, which made him lose face. However, the main reason was that he wanted to use this incident to put pressure on Granny Long. However, Granny Long looked up and said expressionlessly, "Guardian Bai, please calm down. The conflict between the 2 gods' disciples is a personal grudge between the younger generation. As elders, how can we lower ourselves to the same level as them? If the news gets out, we will be ridiculed by the world." Chapter 1741. Protector Bai's thoughts have nothing to do with me. Granny Long turned a blind eye to Bai Qing's anger and replied indifferently. Bai Qing became more and more furious. He felt that he had lost all his face and could not stay any longer. Granny Long, I came here with good intentions to offer you a gift and discuss the matter of borrowing the treasure. I did not expect you to have such an attitude. I will ask you one last time. Will you lend me the reverse water sword or not? Although Bai Qing was furious, he did not lose his head. He still looked at the big picture and thought about the reverse water sword. Granny Long shook her head and said calmly, Protector Bai, I said just now that the reverse water sword is a divine weapon. How can it be lent to others so easily? I cannot make the decision. If your country is sincere, why don't you let martial god Tianju go to the Luoshui Divine Lord personally? The meaning of these words was clear. She did not want to lend it to him. Bai Qing had nothing to say. He said with a cold expression, Fine. Since your country is so unreasonable and does not care about the friendship between our countries, I have nothing to say. I will report today's matter to the Divine Lord in detail. Without waiting for him to finish, Granny Long said expressionlessly, Take care, Protector Bai. My legs are inconvenient, so I won't see you off. Bai Qing was even more furious. She was so angry that she almost couldn't breathe. Granny Long was a martial saint expert. She was fine and welcoming the diplomatic group at the square. Now she said that her legs were inconvenient. She did not want to see them off and did not even bother with the basic etiquette. Bai Qing was so humiliated that he almost vomited blood. He left with a belly full of anger. Under the strange gazes of the crowd, he left the main hall with an ashen face and came to the square. Meng Fei quickly came forward and asked with a gloomy expression, Second Protector, what should we do next? Before he could finish, Bai Qing shouted coldly, Let's go. Then Bai Qing took out a flying boat and quickly left Luotian Mountain with Meng Fei and 2 black-armored guards. After a long time, Bai Qing and Meng Fei's anger gradually subsided and they calmed down. Meng Fei touched his robe and looked around. Suddenly he thought of something and his expression changed. Oh no. Bai Qing sat across from him. Seeing his strange expression, she asked with a sullen face, Meng Fei? What's wrong? Second guardian, Meng Fei hesitated for a moment before he said with a heart full of apprehension, when I was thrown out of the main hall by Ji Tianxing just now, the treasure box was left in the main hall. What? Bai Qing's eyes widened in anger and his anger exploded once again. You idiot! If you can't even guard a treasure box, what use do I have for you? Not only did we not manage to borrow the reverse water sword, we even left the heaven fire glazed true gold at the Luotian mountain. I'm so angry. Meng Fei shrank his neck after being scolded. After a while he mustered up his courage and tried to say, Second protector, why don't we go back and get it? Bai Qing glared at him coldly and scolded, do you have a pig's brain? They had already flown so far and now they were running back to get the treasure box? You can be shameless, but I can't afford to lose face like that. Meng Fei was scolded until he was speechless. He could only obediently shut his mouth and lower his head in a repentant posture. Bai Qing was silent for a moment before his anger subsided. He muttered in a cold voice, the Luotian divine nation is really getting more and more outrageous. They actually dare to openly go against my country. Since that's the case, then don't blame my country for being ruthless. We'll wait and see in the future. Meng Fei also secretly clenched his fists. He recalled Ji Tianxing's words in his mind, and his eyes flashed with a thick sense of hatred. Luotian Mountain Conference Hall. Ever since Bai Qing and the others left, the originally silent hall immediately became lively. Yiqing Luo, Lu Xiaoming, and Zobin all gathered around Ji Tianxing's side, discussing excitedly. Eldest senior brother, that move of yours just now was simply too shocking. All of us were dumbfounded. Everyone has long disliked that Bai Qing and Meng Fei. They came to the Luotian mountain to show off their strength. Eldest senior brother is really ruthless. He threw that kid out in front of everyone. That's such a slap in the face. It's not just us who didn't expect this. That kid and Bai Qing definitely didn't expect eldest senior brother to be so decisive. He's so domineering. A few God's disciples were talking about what happened just now. They were all exultant, supporting and admiring Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing only smiled faintly and didn't say anything. At this moment, Granny Long walked into the hall and stood in front of everyone. Her face was a little solemn and there was a worried look on her face. A few God's disciples immediately quietened down and kept silent. Before Granny Long could speak, Yun Yao defended Ji Tianxing. Granny Long, you can't blame Tianxing for what happened just now. It was Meng Fei who spoke rudely first. Tianxing warned him. Obviously, Yun Yao knew that today's negotiation had failed. She was worried that Granny Long would blame Ji Tianxing. However, before she could finish, Granny Long waved her hand and said, Yun Yao, you don't have to defend Tianxing. I know very well that I don't mean to blame Tianxing. Everyone, don't worry. No matter how strong the Luoshui holy nation is, we will never punish our own disciples and people just to please an external enemy. After hearing Granny Long's words, Yun Yao was relieved. The God's disciples also felt warm and proud. Ji Tianxing looked at Granny Long and analyzed seriously. Granny Long, the people from the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation came with ill intentions. They didn't take the Luoshui holy nation seriously from the beginning. Moreover, Bai Qing and Meng Fei were arrogant, which made people feel disgusted. The Heaven Extinction Holy Nation only sent Bai Qing and Meng Fei with a piece of heavenly flame glazed true gold. They want to borrow the reverse water divine sword? I have a feeling that this matter is not so simple. I'm afraid that the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation has other plans. Granny Long nodded in agreement and said seriously, that's right. Tianxing, your analysis is completely correct. It's just a piece of heavenly flame glazed true gold. Although it's a top-notch gem material, it can't be compared to the reverse water divine sword. I'm just worried that the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation's intention to borrow the reverse water divine sword is fake. Their real intention is to find an excuse to provoke a dispute between the two nations and snatch the resources and treasures. Previously, the North Underworld Mountain invaded the Holy Nation and caused chaos in the Holy Nation, killing the people. Now, the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation is here to provoke us. The holy nation is in a state of internal and external troubles. I'm afraid that a storm is coming. At this moment, Lu Xiaoming suddenly realized something and exclaimed, Bai Qing, that old man didn't take the treasure box away? Everyone turned to look at her and saw that she was picking up a sandalwood treasure box from the ground. The treasure box contained the heavenly flame glazed true gold. Lu Xiaoming held the sandalwood treasure box with both hands and presented it to Granny Long. Granny Long thought for a while and waved her hand. Tianxing, ever since you came to the Luotian mountain, I haven't rewarded you with any resources or treasures. Chapter 1742. The heavenly flame glazed true gold was a top-notch crafting material that could be used to craft sacred-level magic treasures. Even to the Luotian mountain it was a rare treasure. However, the Luotian mountain did not lack this material at the moment. Hence Granny Long gave it to Ji Tianxing as a gift. Of course Ji Tianxing wouldn't refuse. He accepted the gift as a matter of course. Thank you, Granny Long. It would be impolite of me to decline. As he spoke, he took the sandalwood box and put it into his space ring. At the same time, Burial of Heaven reminded him in his mind, I didn't expect the Heaven End God Nation to send a heavenly flame glazed true gold over. With the heavenly flame glazed true gold and the other 3 materials, I will be able to repair the sword. There was no doubt that Burial of Heaven had told Ji Tianxing about the materials needed to repair the sword a year ago. It was a pity that Ji Tianxing had been cultivating in seclusion for the past year and did not have the chance to explore and search for crafting materials. Hence, the matter of repairing the sword of Burial of Heaven had been put on hold again, and he had not collected the materials yet. When Bai Qing took out the heavenly flame glazed true gold, Burial of Heaven reminded Ji Tianxing again. Ji Tianxing was still thinking about how to get the heavenly flame glazed true gold. However, what happened later was beyond everyone's expectations. He did not expect to get the materials in such a way. At this time Granny Long said to everyone, Everyone, today's matter ends here. You can leave now. Also, everyone must keep this matter a secret. Do not spread it out. The god's disciples bowed and said yes before leaving the conference hall one after another. After a while, only Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao and Granny Long were left in the meeting hall. When Ji Tianxing saw that everyone had left, he could not help but ask, Granny Long, is the flaming mountain and the glazed fire dragon that Bai Qing mentioned true? Granny Long nodded solemnly and said, That's true. The flaming mountain was located in the ruins of God. The ruins of God was the intersection of the 3 divine kingdoms and did not belong to any of them. As early as 10,000 years ago, the Mountain of Flames had always existed. It was extremely dangerous there. Regardless of whether one was a cross-calamity realm or a martial sage, one could lose his life if he barged into the flame mountain. However, the flaming mountain was vast and there were endless mineral veins hidden underground. After being refined by the colored glass heavenly flame, those mineral veins have long become incomparably pure, and who knows how many precious gems and ores have been born. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing's eyes revealed a hint of anticipation. He had plans to repair the sword of Burial of Heaven, so he was particularly interested in ores. Granny Long frowned as she recalled, then continued, As for that glazed fire dragon, it appeared 3,000 years ago. At that time, a group of adventurers from the ruins of God did their best to capture the glazed fire dragon after discovering it. In the end, dozens of adventurers joined forces to besiege the glazed fire dragon, but they could not do anything to it. Instead, they were all killed. Since then, the glazed fire dragon had disappeared. Many powerhouses rushed to search for it, but they could not find it. Until 2,000 years ago, the glazed fire dragon appeared again. Many of the Empire's forces and adventurer teams experts heard the news and rushed to capture it. However, the glazed fire dragon killed countless powerhouses and successfully escaped back to the flaming mountain. 1,000 years ago, the glazed fire dragon appeared again, and once again, it caused a bloodbath and then hid in the flaming mountain. After listening to Granny Long's narration, Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, In that case, the glazed fire dragon's nest is the flaming mountain, and it appears once every 1,000 years. That's right. Granny Long nodded. Ji Tianxing frowned slightly as he pondered, then continued to ask, The glazed fire dragon has appeared 3 times, and even though it was surrounded by countless powerhouses, it was not captured. In addition to the flaming mountain, it must be very powerful, right? Granny Long thought for a moment and nodded. It is said that when the glazed fire dragon appeared 1,000 years ago, it had already passed the 8th tribulation. With its talent and aptitude, it must have passed the 9th tribulation and reached the martial sage realm by now. Ji Tianqing frowned. After a moment of silence he asked again, Granny Long, can the reverse water divine sword really suppress the flaming mountain and restrain the glazed fire dragon? Granny Long did not hesitate and said in a firm tone, of course. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and showed a touch of doubt. Then why didn't the Luoshui martial god take action to subdue the glazed fire dragon? Granny Long was stunned for a moment, then she shook her head and said with a smile, Tianqing, water and fire are incompatible. No matter how noble the glazed fire dragon is, it is incompatible with the Divine Master's aura. The Divine Master will not like it. Ji Tianqing muttered in his heart, the glazed fire dragon that all the experts in the world dream of, but the Luoshui martial god is indifferent because he doesn't like it. What a casual reason. Granny Long looked at him and asked in a low voice, Tianqing, you are so concerned about the glazed fire dragon, don't tell me, you want to capture it? Yun Yao also saw the clues and guessed his thoughts. Ji Tianqing did not hide and nodded, Granny Long, the people of the Heaven and Divine Nation want it but can't get it. We have the reverse water divine sword, why not give it a try? If we can capture the glazed fire dragon, the power of the Luoshui divine nation will be greatly improved. Granny Long smiled bitterly and shook her head. Tianqing, countless experts have tried their best and failed to subdue the glazed fire dragon. This matter is not that simple. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, then even if we can't capture the glazed fire dragon, we can enter the blazing mountain and mine the underground ore veins and gems. It will be a great harvest. This. Granny Long hesitated, frowning and thinking. Yun Yao looked at Ji Tianqing and asked secretly, Tianqing, why do you want to go to the blazing mountain so much? Are you interested in the glazed fire dragon? Or are you looking for ore veins and materials? Others did not know, but Yun Yao knew very well that Ji Tianqing had a black dragon and an unrepaired divine sword. She guessed that Ji Tianqing was not interested in the glazed fire dragon. It was more likely that he wanted to find ore veins and materials. Sure enough, Ji Tianqing replied, I am preparing to repair the burial of Heaven's sword. Currently I only have the heavenly flame glazed true gold. I am still missing a few ores and materials. I am going to the blazing mountain to try my luck. As for the glazed fire dragon, it would be best if we can capture it. Even if we can't, we won't lose anything. Yun Yao nodded to show that she understood. Seeing that Granny Long was still considering, she said, Granny Long, I agree with Tianqing's suggestion. The glazed fire dragon is an item without an owner, and the blazing mountain is also in the ruins of God. It is not under the jurisdiction of the 3 divine nations. We have the reverse water divine sword, so we can give it a try. Even if we can't capture the glazed fire dragon, we can get a lot of ore veins and gems. Chapter 1743. Yun Yao's words interrupted Grandma Long's train of thought. She came back to her senses and looked at Yun Yao with a complicated gaze. She sighed. The flaming mountain is extremely dangerous. The glazed fire dragon is also a noble and powerful divine beast that cannot be tamed. Why do you want to take the risk? Yun Yao looked at Grandma Long with a firm gaze and said calmly, Grandma Long, we know what you said. We will be careful. Moreover, a martial artist's cultivation is like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you will fall behind. Over the years, the two of us have gone through so many hardships and endured so many life and death crises. Because of this, we were able to grow so quickly and become the favored ones of the heavens. Grandma Long saw that Yun Yao's attitude was firm and her words were reasonable, so she temporarily relented. Fine, since you insist on going, this old one won't stop you. As for the water reverse divine sword, Yun Yao will follow me to the secret chamber and report to the Divine Master personally. There shouldn't be any problems. After all, the Divine Master has mentioned to me before that he has already planned to bestow the water reverse divine sword to you. However, your strength is not enough and the time is not ripe, so this matter has been put on hold. Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing were startled when they heard the news. They were in disbelief. What? The Divine Master has already planned to bestow the water reverse divine sword to me? Yun Yao looked at Grandma Long in disbelief. Grandma Long nodded and said, yes. With the Divine Master's strength and means, there is basically no need for him to use the water reverse divine sword. You are the Divine Master's most valued disciple and the only divine lady. Of course he will bestow the divine sword to you. Yunyao came back to her senses and said with a gratified expression, if that's the case then it will be easy. Grandma Long, let's go to the secret chamber and report to the Divine Master. Grandma Long couldn't help but smile bitterly when she saw how scheming she was. Sigh. You are usually calm and wise, but when it comes to Tianqing you can't keep your cool. Yunyao just smiled faintly and didn't say anything. After that, Granny Long left the main hall with Yunyao and went to the secret chamber. Tianqing also left the meeting hall and returned to Cloudwater Palace. While waiting for Yunyao to return, he took out the sandalwood box from his spatial ring. He placed the sandalwood box on the table and slowly opened it. Shwa! A dazzling red light immediately blossomed from the treasure box, illuminating the entire room with a red glow. Tianqing looked down and saw a fist-sized fiery red crystal lying quietly in the box. This crystal was oval in shape and its surface was very smooth like a cobblestone. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that the surface of the gem was dark red, as if it was wrapped in a layer of flowing fire. But in reality the inside of the gem was dark gold, and it emitted an incomparably violent and blazing aura. Tianqing stared at the gem and observed it for a while, then murmured in a low voice, "It is indeed a pure and flawless heavenly flame true gold. If I want to repair the Sword of Burial of Heaven I need to gather 4 top-notch materials. Now that I have the heavenly flame true gold, I only need the Wind Thunder Meteorite Iron, the Yin Yang Divine Jade and the Golden Crow Copper Marrow." Thinking of this he closed his eyes and began to meditate, and his primordial spirit entered Kenshin's tomb. Then his primordial spirit entered the Divine Weapon Pavilion through the second tombstone. In the huge Divine Weapon Pavilion, there was a huge heavenly cauldron in the middle of the main hall, exuding an ancient and mysterious aura. There were more than 360 secret compartments carved into the walls of the main hall, and more than 300 kinds of refining materials were stored inside. Each of the refining materials was a rare top-notch treasure, and their value was no less than that of the heavenly flame true gold. There were even many ores and gems that were more valuable than the heavenly flame true gold. Tianqing opened the secret compartments one by one, and checked the treasures stored inside to find the materials he needed. After a full 2 hours he had checked more than 300 secret compartments and only found the Yin Yang Divine Jade. As for the Wind Thunder Meteorite Iron and the Golden Crow Copper Marrow, the Divine Weapon Pavilion did not have them. Tianqing took the Yin Yang Divine Jade and left the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Swoosh! After his primordial spirit returned to its original position, he put the Yin Yang Divine Jade and the Heavenly Flame True Gold into the space ring. Now that I have 2 sets of materials, if I can find the other 2 in the Flaming Mountain, it will be a success. Tianqing muttered to himself, I wonder what grade the Burial of Heaven will be restored to after I gather those 4 materials and repair the sword body? The voice of the Burial of Heaven immediately rang in his mind. Those 4 sets of materials are top-notch treasures, and can be used to refine saint-level Dharma treasures. Tianqing immediately understood what it meant and asked in disbelief, Burial of Heaven, do you mean that after I repair the sword body for you, you can be restored to saint level? Of course. The Burial of Heaven answered without hesitation. Tianqing's eyes flashed and his heart started to beat faster. That's great. If it can really be restored to saint level and become a complete holy sword, its power will definitely increase by dozens of times. At that time, even if I encounter a powerhouse at the 5th or 6th level of the Crossing Calamity Realm, I will be able to defeat him. Not long after, Yunyao returned to the room. Tianqing suppressed the distracting thoughts in his heart, looked at her with concern and asked, Yao Yao, how is it? Did the Luoshui martial god agree? Yunyao smiled and nodded. Granny Long reported the ins and outs of the matter to the Divine Master. The Divine Master was also quite displeased that the Heaven Absolute Divine Kingdom wanted to borrow the Reverse Water Divine Sword. However, the North Underworld Mountain and the Heaven Absolute Divine Kingdom attacked at the same time, and the Divine Kingdom was attacked from both sides. After I explained the situation to the Divine Master, the Divine Master has agreed to give me the Reverse Water Divine Sword in advance. Hearing this, Tianqing showed a gratified smile and nodded, that's good. With the Reverse Water Divine Sword we can enter the Mountain of Flames. Yunyao hesitated for a moment and then said, Granny Long will leave tomorrow and go to the Divine Kingdom to get the reverse water divine sword. She will come back in about 10 days. It just so happens that my heavenly tribulation is coming soon. It will come in about half a month. When I get the reverse water divine sword, I will definitely have more confidence to pass the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianxing's body shook immediately, and his eyes were filled with disbelief and a touch of worry. Yao Yao, you are going to pass the heavenly tribulation in half a month? Why didn't you say such an important thing earlier? Yun Yao shook her head gently and comforted in a soft voice. Tianxing, you don't have to worry about me. It's only the first heavenly tribulation and it shouldn't be too powerful. Even without the reverse water divine sword, I am confident that I can pass it. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and nodded. That's true. With your strength and aptitude, passing the first heavenly tribulation will be easy. In that case, we will wait patiently for Granny Long to come back with the divine sword. After you pass the heavenly tribulation, we will go to the Mountain of Flames in the Divine Ruins. Chapter 1744. Unknowingly 10 days had passed. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were cultivating in seclusion in their respective chambers. In order to face the impending heavenly tribulation, Yun Yao cultivated without any distractions. She tried her best to raise her strength and strengthen her martial foundation. No matter what, she had to do her best to face the heavenly tribulation. She could not afford any mistakes or accidents. 10 days of cultivation had indeed raised her strength significantly. Her martial foundation had become more solid. However, she had already reached the peak of the essence soul realm. Even if her strength had increased, it was limited. The date of the heavenly tribulation was approaching. She felt a heavy pressure on her heart. The feeling in her heart was becoming clearer and clearer. Her heavenly tribulation would descend in 6 days. Ji Tianxing cultivated in seclusion for 10 days. His strength was still at the peak of the essence soul realm. However, his sword intent had become more condensed and had formed a basic embryonic form. It was tenacious and indomitable, looking down on the world. This was his sword intent. It represented his will and sword Dao beliefs. The increase in sword intent would not increase his strength, but it would make his sword Dao more powerful and outstanding. He was looking forward to seeing how powerful his sword Dao would be when he completely comprehended sword intent. As for his heavenly tribulation, he still could not sense the aura of the heavenly tribulation. He did not know when it would arrive. In any case, he had already grasped the power of the divine lightning. He did not take the heavenly tribulation to heart. He did not feel that it would be much of a threat. That evening, Granny Long finally returned to Luotian Mountain. After she returned to her residence, she rested for a moment before sending a maidservant to Cloud Water Palace. Yun Yao had been waiting for news in Cloud Water Palace. When she heard that Granny Long had returned, she hurriedly rushed to meet her. The two met in Granny Long's study. Yun Yao bowed to her and asked with concern, "Granny, did your trip to the Divine Kingdom go smoothly?" Granny Long smiled and nodded. "Everything went smoothly. I have also brought back the water reversal divine sword that the Divine Lord bestowed upon you." As she spoke, she took out a treasured sword from her interspatial ring. It was a 3-foot-long divine sword. It was stored in a silver-white sword case. Its design was exquisite and beautiful. The surface of the scabbard was engraved with exquisite patterns and complicated formation runes. It was obvious that there was a seal on it. The sword sheath was suffused with a silver light, like the radiance of the stars in the night sky, emitting a divine aura. Yun Yao stared at the sword box with burning eyes. She slowly stretched out her hands and held the sword box in her hands, carefully observing it. The divine sword was light in his hand and gave him a cool feeling. The silver-white sword hilt was engraved with complicated patterns, and it glowed with a faint ice-blue brilliance. Yun Yao only felt a strong icy aura coming from the sword hilt and entering her body through her palm. However, that powerful icy aura did not make her feel uncomfortable. Instead, it gave her a feeling of communication. It felt as if the divine sword had become one with her arm, and she could control it with her will. Playing. She held the scabbard in her left hand and the hilt in her right hand. She pulled out the sword with a little force. Suddenly, a 3-foot-long ice-blue sword blade appeared in front of her eyes. The blade of the sword was as wide as 2 fingers. Its entire body was ice blue, as if it was made of crystal, sparkling and translucent, spotless. A layer of dense ice-blue brilliance flowed on the surface of the sword blade, making the divine sword look very mysterious. She could clearly feel that there was a power that could destroy heaven and earth hidden in the divine sword. It was just that it was holding back. Once she swung the sword, she could easily split open the Luotian mountain and destroy everything within a few hundred miles. This was the power of the divine sword. Yunyao stared at the divine sword without blinking. She was a little excited and muttered softly, as expected of the reverse water divine sword refined by the divine master. It is really a rare divine weapon in the world. Granny Long looked at her kindly and reminded her, Yunyao, other than this reverse water divine sword, the divine master also imparted a set of sacrificial and sword control techniques. They are all improved for you. I will impart the techniques to you later. Try to refine the divine sword in the next few days. Only after you refine the divine sword will it truly belong to you. It will be connected to your mind and you will be able to use it like your own arm. Only then will you be able to unleash more power. Yunyao nodded and put the sword back into its sheath. She cupped her hands and said, Granny, please impart the techniques to me. Granny Long silently channeled her energy for a moment. Then a ball of dense white light flew out from her forehead. The egg-sized ball of white light contained complicated seal words and symbols. It was shining brightly. Granny Long pointed with her right hand and the ball of light entered Yunyao's forehead. Suddenly, a huge amount of information flooded her mind. Her mind was bloated and her consciousness was a little blurry. After 10 breaths, she returned to normal. She bowed to Granny Long and said, Granny, I will take my leave now. My heavenly tribulation will descend in 6 days. Granny Long nodded slightly and reminded her, then you must refine the divine sword in the next few days no matter what. 6 days later, you will undergo your tribulation on the solitary cloud peak in the back mountain. Yunyao nodded and left with the reverse water divine sword. After returning to the secret room in the Cloud Water Palace, she did not care about anything else. She focused on cultivating and refining the divine sword. 6 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Yunyao was sitting cross-legged in the secret room. She was making hand seals with both hands. Her body was surging with boundless magic power and was emitting a dazzling light. In front of her, 2 feet above the ground, floated a divine sword that was completely ice blue in color. The divine sword was shining with a dazzling blue light and was emitting a vast and holy aura. An invisible connection was formed between her and the divine sword. It was as if they had become one. After a while, the sun rose from the east. The golden sun shone on the Luotian mountain. At the same time, the ice blue light on the divine sword disappeared. Yunyao also stopped. Clang. The divine sword returned to its scabbard. It turned into a wisp of icy light and disappeared into her body. Phew. She opened her eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. A gratified smile appeared in her eyes. Finally, the refinement is complete. She got up and left the secret room. Ji Tianxing was already waiting outside the secret room. When he saw Yunyao come out, he looked her up and down and smiled. Looks like Yao Yao, you've already completed the refinement of the divine sword? He could clearly sense that Yunyao's temperament had changed. There was a hint of holiness and coldness in her. At the same time, Yunyao's strength and aura had reached a critical point. Her body seemed to contain a power that could destroy the world and turn the universe upside down. Yunyao nodded and said, "It went well. Let's go." After saying that, the two left the Cloud Water Palace side by side and rushed to the back mountain of the Luotian mountain. The back mountain was very steep. Usually no one went in or out, especially the solitary cloud peak. It was isolated on the edge of the cliff. It was like a stone tablet standing on the peak of the mountain. White clouds and thick fog covered most of the solitary cloud peak. Chapter 1745. Under the morning sun, Lone Cloud Peak was covered with a layer of light gold. There was no grass on the platform at the top of the mountain. The ground was full of uneven rock layers. There were many cracks and pits on the ground, and there were scorched marks left by the lightning strikes. Apparently, the tribulation cultivators of Luotian Mountain often went through the heavenly tribulation on Lone Cloud Peak. When Ji Tianxing and Yunyao arrived at Lone Cloud Peak, Grandma Long was already there and had been waiting for them for a long time. Apart from Grandma Long, there were a few young disciples of God, a dozen deacons and many guards. A few days ago, the news that Yunyao was going to go through the heavenly tribulation had spread on Luotian Mountain. As the first disciple of Luotian Mountain and the most honorable goddess, she had always been the center of attention. Now she was the first disciple of God to go through the heavenly tribulation. Of course, everyone came to watch the show. Seeing Yunyao and Ji Tianxing, Grandma Long looked at them kindly and said in a serious tone, "Yunyao, this is your first heavenly tribulation. It's very important and you can't make any mistakes. I still need to tell you about the taboos and tricks of the heavenly tribulation in case there are any accidents. The heavenly tribulation is the supreme will of heaven. There are established rules and you can't go against them. When Yunyao goes through the heavenly tribulation later, she can only stand on Lone Cloud Peak alone. No one can go near her, let alone help her. When the heavenly tribulation starts, there will be a tribulation cloud that will cover the entire Lone Cloud Peak and suppress only Yunyao. If someone enters the tribulation cloud, the power of the heavenly tribulation will be doubled. If anyone helps Yunyao to resist the heavenly tribulation, the power of the heavenly tribulation will be doubled. By then everyone will be annihilated." Ji Tianxing and Yunyao nodded to show that they understood. "Don't worry, Grandma Long. I won't interfere." "Grandma Long, don't worry. I can handle the heavenly tribulation alone." Grandma Long nodded slightly and continued, "The heavenly tribulation of each person is different because of their talent. The heavenly tribulation of mediocre people usually only has 3 heavenly thunders. If they can resist the heavenly tribulation, they can pass it successfully. Those with outstanding aptitude would attract 4 to 6 bolts of heavenly lightning. Moreover, the heavenly lightning would also contain the power of other attributes. Peerless geniuses with extraordinary talent would attract more than 6 bolts of heavenly lightning. Furthermore, the heavenly lightning would mutate and possess strange and unpredictable powers. Yunyao, I'm worried that since your aptitude is too outstanding, the heavenly tribulation you attract will also be extraordinary." Regarding this point, Ji Tianxing and Yunyao had already learned about it and were well aware of it. "Granny, don't worry. I know what I'm doing and I'm confident that I can deal with it." Yunyao looked at Granny Long with a firm gaze, her voice filled with confidence. Only then did Granny Long feel relieved. She nodded and said, "That's good. When you're ready you can ascend Solitary Cloud Peak." After saying that, Granny Long led the gods' apprentices, deacons and guards and flew up into the sky. Everyone stood in the sky 20 miles away from Solitary Cloud Peak, ready to watch Yunyao go through the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianxing held Yunyao's hand and encouraged her with a smile. "Yao Yao, I believe that you'll definitely go through it smoothly. You won't let me down and there won't be any accidents, right?" Yunyao nodded and said calmly, "Tianxing, wait for me here. I'll be back soon." After saying that, she turned around and flew up into the sky, landing on Solitary Cloud Peak with her clothes fluttering in the wind. Solitary Cloud Peak was surrounded by clouds and a strong wind was blowing. Yunyao stood on the peak of the mountain, her clothes and hair fluttering in the wind. Her entire body exuded an otherworldly immortal qi. She stood quietly on a huge rock and closed her eyes, slowly releasing the vast dermic powers in her body. Suddenly, a formless and vast aura shot up into the sky, straight into the sky. At this moment she didn't hide or suppress her power anymore. She completely released it and showed her most powerful side. The majestic and violent power immediately shrouded the entire Solitary Cloud Peak. The surrounding sea of clouds and dense fog were immediately dispersed, and the fierce wind suddenly stopped. Then thick gray clouds appeared in the sky, coming from all directions and gathering in the sky above Solitary Cloud Peak. After a short while, a cloud with a radius of 50 miles formed above Solitary Cloud Peak. It was like a huge whirlpool that spun rapidly. The golden sun was blocked and the light in the sky became dim. A strong wind blew from the top of Solitary Cloud Peak and spread in all directions. A sacred and vast invisible power came down from the sky and shrouded the entire Solitary Cloud Peak. That was the invisible will of the heavenly Tao. Ji Tianxing, the god apprentices and the guards all felt their hearts sink and they felt quite depressed. Even Granny Long and the deacons were in awe under the sacred and invisible will of the heavenly Tao. Yunyao, who was on Solitary Cloud Peak, was in the center of the storm and had to bear the most powerful suppression. Her expression turned serious as she stood proudly on top of the mountain. There was no fear on her face. Soon, the gray clouds in the sky shrunk to a radius of 20 miles and became as dark as ink. The clouds spun faster and faster and electric arcs started to flash in the huge whirlpool. Granny Long murmured seriously, "The tribulation cloud has formed. The first heavenly thunder is coming." As expected, after a short while, the thousands of electric arcs in the tribulation cloud formed a sacred thunderbolt and struck down. Boom! With an earth-shattering sound, a 300-foot-long purple heavenly thunder as thick as a water tank struck down from the sky toward Yunyao. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing, Granny Long, and the other god's disciples felt their hearts in their mouths. They were all very worried. Yunyao, who was on solitary cloud peak, was not afraid at all. She raised her head to look at the bolt of lightning, and a brilliant light flashed in her right hand, and a sparkling and translucent ice-blue sword appeared. It was the reverse water divine sword. She made a sword art with her left hand and held the divine sword with her right hand. She stabbed at the thunderbolt in the sky with all her strength. Swish! 1,000-foot-long icy blue sword radiance appeared in the sky and collided with the heavenly thunder with an unstoppable force. Boom! There was an earth-shattering sound when the two collided. It spread across the entire Luotian mountain and shocked everyone within a few hundred miles. The heavenly thunder was destroyed by the sword radiance. It exploded into hundreds of purple electric arcs and scattered on solitary cloud peak. Boom! 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 The barren solitary cloud peak started to shake. Many cracks appeared on the ground and gravel splashed everywhere. Yunyao stood on top of the millstone. Everything around her was safe and sound. She didn't see any lightning. After a while, the gravel and the lightning dissipated. Peace was restored on the peak of the mountain. She looked up at the sky calmly and waited for the second heavenly thunder to strike. In the sky 20 miles away, many gods' apprentices, deacons, and guards were dumbfounded by what they saw. Everyone had a horrified expression on their faces. They simply couldn't believe their own eyes. The sacred and violent heavenly thunder was destroyed by Yunyao with one strike. Chapter 1746. The deacons, God's disciples, and the guards were not the only ones who were stunned. Even Granny Long's eyes narrowed in disbelief. She had seen others go through the heavenly tribulations at least 100 times over the past few hundred years. However, she had never seen anyone who was going through the heavenly tribulation so confidently. Not only did she face the heavenly lightning head-on, but she had also destroyed it with her sword. She was a martial sage and had gone through the heavenly tribulations before. Every time she went through the heavenly tribulations, it was a painful memory that she could not bear to recall. She knew how scary the heavenly tribulations were, and that was why she was worried about Yunyao's safety. However, Yunyao's performance had overturned her understanding of the heavenly tribulation and opened her eyes. It seems like this is the power of a top genius and the divine sword. Granny Long looked at Yunyao with shining eyes and murmured in amazement. At that moment, the second heavenly lightning was brewing in the calamity cloud vortex in the sky. Tens of thousands of purple lightning arcs gathered in the calamity cloud vortex and formed a pillar of purple lightning. It was 400 feet long and it struck down from the sky. The power of the second heavenly lightning was more than 2 times stronger than the first one. Boom! Thunder roared and the dazzling lightning tore through the sky and lit up the dark sky. It was so bright that people could not open their eyes. Granny Long and the rest of the people were nervous again as they looked at Yunyao. They were worried for her. Ji Tianxing was the only one who looked at Yunyao calmly. He was not worried. After all, he knew Yunyao the best. The heavenly lightning pillar was like a huge Zidian dragon as it struck toward Yunyao. It was about to engulf her. However, she was fearless. Her body was as straight as a sword and her aura was as calm as water. All of a sudden she moved. She formed a sword art with her left hand and drew dozens of arcs in front of her to form a mysterious word. She held the reverse water divine sword in her right hand and stabbed 9 times toward the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 9 rays of dazzling blue sword radiance shot out like lightning. They formed a 9 palaces formation and stabbed toward the heavenly lightning pillar. She did not block the heavenly lightning and chose to face it. This scene shocked Granny Long and everyone else. Their hearts almost stopped beating. Bang 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 bang. A third of an instant later, the 9 giant icy blue swords struck the bolt of heavenly lightning with boundless divine might. A series of heaven-shaking explosions erupted, resounding through the clouds and shaking the entire Luotian mountain. The 9 sword lights collapsed on the spot, shattering into billions of ice crystals that rained down like torrential rain. The mighty and violent heavenly thunder light pillar was also shattered. It split into thousands of purple electric arcs and scattered on the solitary cloud peak. The rocky ground, which was already in a mess, was suddenly filled with dense cracks. Hundreds of large pits appeared and soil and stones burst out into the sky. A moment later, the smoke and dust in the sky dispersed. Only then did everyone see clearly that Yunyao was unscathed. There was nothing unusual within 100 feet of her. However, a layer of the entire mountain peak had been shaved off, and it had dropped by more than 10 feet. Fortunately, the heavenly lightning was destroyed by Yunyao. Otherwise, its power would be even more terrifying. Many of the god's disciples and guards were filled with shock. They had a clearer understanding of the terrifying power of the heavenly lightning. At the same time, everyone was amazed by Yunyao's power and techniques. Just 10 breaths later, the third bolt of heavenly lightning struck. The pitch-black whirlpool of tribulation clouds spat out a 500-foot-long zidian that looked like a giant dragon. The power of this bolt of heavenly lightning was twice as powerful as before. Before the heavenly lightning struck, heaven and earth were already filled with violent destructive power. Everyone knew that as long as they did not step onto the solitary cloud peak, they would not be hit by the heavenly lightning. However, many people were intimidated by the heavenly lightning and could not help but back away from the solitary cloud peak to avoid being injured. Kaboom! An earth-shattering explosion sounded and the heavenly lightning struck. Yunyao was still standing proudly in the wind. Her left hand formed a sword seal and her right hand waved the divine sword. 24 sword lights danced in the wind. Bang 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 bang. Another dull explosion sounded and the 24 sword lights were released. They were like a few ice flowers that appeared in the dark sky. It was extremely gorgeous. The heavenly thunder light pillar also shattered into tens of thousands of electric arcs, crackling and crackling as they scattered in the sky. Thousands of purple electric arcs and the ice flowers complemented each other, creating a different kind of gorgeous scene. At this moment, the crowd did not feel that the heavenly lightning was terrifying. They were all amazed by the rare beauty. The third bolt of heavenly lightning was also destroyed by Yunyao. Granny Long, many of the god's disciples, attendants, and guards were all excited and full of shock. Waves of exclamations and discussions could be heard from the crowd. This is unbelievable. Senior Yunyao actually destroyed 3 bolts of heavenly lightning in a row. This is simply shocking. In the past 1,000 years, who could accomplish such an amazing feat? After this news spreads, Senior Sister's name will definitely spread throughout the entire Shenwu continent. Although Senior Sister has the divine sword in her hand, how much power she can unleash depends on her talent and strength. It's already a miracle that she was able to destroy 3 bolts of heavenly lightning in a row. If it was an ordinary person, they would have succeeded in their tribulation after the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. Yunyao is a peerless genius. Her tribulation is definitely different. How can there only be 3 bolts of heavenly lightning? Granny Long and the attendants had a new understanding of Yunyao's talent and strength. The god's disciples admired and envied Yunyao. They hoped that they could be like her, facing the tribulation head-on and destroying the heavenly lightning with their swords. Everyone was immersed in shock and amazement. Only Ji Tianxing's expression became serious. He stared at the tribulation cloud vortex with a tinge of worry in his eyes. He knew very well that the first 3 bolts of heavenly lightning would not be a threat to Yunyao. However, the following bolts of heavenly lightning would be much more powerful and unpredictable. Sure enough, thousands of golden, purple, and blue electric arcs appeared in the dark tribulation cloud vortex and quickly gathered together. In the blink of an eye, the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning of different colors gathered together to form a dazzling pillar of heavenly lightning. This pillar of heavenly lightning was different from the previous 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. Not only was it more than 600 feet long, but it also contained 3 different types of power. The purple heavenly lightning had the power to destroy heaven and earth. The golden heavenly lightning was the fiercest and could destroy all kinds of defenses. As for the blue heavenly lightning, it could penetrate the body and destroy the divine soul directly. Yunyao held the upstream sword in her hand and looked up at the heavenly lightning that was descending from the sky. A tinge of seriousness flashed past her eyes. The terrifying and invisible power pressed down on her like a huge mountain, causing her feet to sink into a millstone. It was almost impossible for her to move. However, she tried her best to hold on and maintain her proud posture. She refused to bend down and lower her head. She knew very well that the heavenly lightning could not be destroyed. She could only use all her strength to resist it. Hence, she held the upstream sword with both hands and raised it above her head. Then she brandished the sword and shot out 36 rays of icy sword light. Chapter 1747. As Yun Yao chanted an obscure incantation, her body also burst out with a soaring fighting spirit. 36 cold sword radiances formed a mysterious array and started to spin rapidly. Suddenly, the sword radiances formed a round plate and the cold light lit up the sky. The lone cloud peak and the surrounding area turned into a world of blue light. The three-colored thunderbolt hit the ice blue plate and made a deafening sound. The disc collapsed on the spot, exploding into millions of ice shards that shot out in all directions. Swish, swish, swish. Countless ice shards flew across the sky like sword chi and shooting stars. At the same time, the tricolored thunderbolt also exploded, turning into multicolored thunderbolts and lightning. It was like a fairy scattering flowers. Yun Yao successfully blocked the thunderbolt and wasn't hurt. However, the top of the lone cloud peak was shattered by the thunderbolts and turned into ruins. Dust, gravel, ice crystal fragments, and lightning arcs spread out like a huge wave. The expressions of the god's disciples, deacons, and guards changed as they stepped back in fear. However, they were too slow and couldn't dodge the impact. At the critical moment, Granny Long leisurely waved her palms, releasing a bright golden light. Swish! The golden light stretched across the sky, forming a tall wall over 10,000 feet in length, blocking the terrifying shockwaves. She had seen this kind of thing many times in the past few hundred years and could deal with it easily. Many of the god's disciples and guards were still in a state of shock. They all retreated to the sky 40 miles away. Soon the fifth thunderbolt was formed in the tribulation cloud. There were 4 colors in this thunderbolt and it contained the power of 4 different elements. Its power was even more terrifying. Boom! Crack! A deafening explosion rang out as a 70-meter-long pillar of lightning ferociously struck towards Yun Yao with a dazzling light. The terrifying power made it difficult for her to breathe and her body was a bit bent. However, she channeled the longevity divine power in her body and struck out with her left palm in a mysterious trajectory. She executed a defensive mystic art and formed a dark green barrier around her. She waved the water-reversing divine sword with her right hand and shot out dozens of icy blue sword radiances. They formed an icy blue dragon and attacked the thunderbolt. Bam! The icy blue dragon collided with the heavenly thunderbolt and there was a loud sound. The giant dragon instantly collapsed, exploding into countless fragments that splashed across the sky. The heavenly thunderbolt wasn't destroyed, but its power was reduced by a bit before it hit the dark green light shield. Boom! Crack! The dark green light shield and the thunderbolt collapsed at the same time and turned into pieces and thunderbolts that scattered in the sky. The fifth thunderbolt was neutralized by Yun Yao again. The process was scary but not dangerous and the effect was also quite brilliant. The onlookers were shocked and they became more and more excited. Yun Yao didn't look relaxed and she didn't even have time to look at the onlookers' reactions. She forgot everything and focused on dealing with the heavenly tribulation. Not long after, the 6th bolt of lightning struck again. This thunderbolt was 800 feet long and formed by 5 colored thunderbolts. Its power was extremely terrifying. Before the thunderbolt struck, the entire lonely cloud peak trembled from the suppression. The area within 20 miles became a vacuum. Yun Yao bent over and her face became paler. Her legs were also stuck in the millstone and she couldn't move. However, she activated her Dharma power and used a secret technique to resist the thunderbolt. 3,000 weak water. She let out a low cry and formed a hand seal with both hands. She struck out dozens of hand seals as fast as lightning. She had used one of her trump cards. This was a secret technique that Luoshui martial god had modified for her. It was used with the water-reversing divine sword and could maximize the power of the sword. She had just mastered it 2 days ago and this was the first time she used it. Swoosh! The water-reversing divine sword flew into the sky and instantly expanded to 1,000 feet long, turning into an icy blue giant sword. Under Yunyao's control, the divine sword spun at an extremely fast speed, spraying out an overwhelming amount of icy blue water light. An icy blue light shield with a radius of 1,000 feet was immediately formed and enveloped Yunyao within it. Kaboom! The 5-colored thunderbolt struck the icy blue light shield and made a deafening sound. The thunderbolt pillar collapsed and turned into 5-colored thunderbolts. They scattered in the sky like a huge electric net. The icy blue light shield also shook violently and cracks appeared. It was on the verge of collapse. The light shield was damaged and Yunyao also suffered a backlash. Her face turned pale and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She couldn't help but bend over and cover her chest with her hands. Blood kept dripping from the corner of her mouth. Seeing this scene, everyone cried out in alarm and revealed worried expressions. Ji Tianxing's expression was solemn as well. His eyes were filled with worry. However, he didn't say anything. He didn't want to distract Yunyao. Grandma Long looked at Yunyao. While she was worried, she also felt gratified. Although Yunyao is injured, she successfully blocked the 6th thunderbolt. She should be able to survive this heavenly tribulation. Others might not know, but she knew very well that a cultivator who could attract 6 thunderbolts was already an outstanding genius. With Yunyao's talent, the 7th thunderbolt was bound to strike. Yunyao could block 6 thunderbolts and could block the 7th. At most, she would be severely injured. If it were an ordinary cultivator, they would be severely injured and close to death after enduring 6 thunderbolts. At this moment, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky spun faster and changed. Inside the pitch-black vortex, crimson heavenly fire and golden astral winds appeared. The heavenly flames, wind and 5-colored thunderbolts combined to form a dazzling 5-colored thunderbolt pillar hundreds of feet long. Grandma Long's face turned serious when she saw this. She clenched her fists in her sleeves. Yunyao's 7th thunderbolt contains both heavenly flames and wind. Her talent is indeed rare. She's a peerless genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. Everyone also realized that the 7th thunderbolt's power would be unprecedentedly terrifying. Their hearts were in their throats. On Solitary Cloud Peak, Yunyao knelt on the ground with one knee under the terrifying suppressive force. She held the reverse water sword with both hands and stood up stubbornly. She looked up at the sky. When the thunderbolt came crashing down, she gritted her teeth and activated her eternal life divine power. She waved the reverse water sword and used her most powerful technique. Heavenly water sword, separate the world. Her voice was sonorous as she shouted. Next, the divine longevity light shot out from her left palm to form a dark cyan umbrella to protect her. She used her right hand to control the reverse water sword and slashed out a giant icy blue sword that was thousands of feet long. The sword radiance suddenly appeared, standing between the sky and the earth. With an unparalleled momentum, it slashed at the 1,000-foot-long heavenly lightning. Chapter 1748. When Yunyao swung her sword, everyone was shocked. They couldn't believe that she had cut open the sky with her sword and created a crack in the void. The sky above Solitary Cloud Peak was really split into 2 halves by her sword, separating it into 2 worlds. She had cut off the world with her sword. How terrifying! Only a martial saint would be able to unleash such terrifying power. In the next moment, the giant sword hit the heavenly lightning. Bam! There was a loud explosion and the sound shook the world. The 100-meter-long heavenly thunder was shattered into thousands of 5-colored shards, sprinkling down the heavenly fire that covered the sky and earth. However, even though the heavenly lightning was smashed, the golden wind still carried the heavenly fire and the 5-colored lightning toward Yunyao. Boom, boom, boom. The dark green umbrella was hit by thousands of attacks and made a series of explosions. Although the longevity divine light was powerful, it couldn't withstand such terrifying heavenly might. After 2 breaths, the dark green umbrella was smashed into pieces. The strong wind, the heavenly fire and the 5-colored lightning immediately engulfed Yunyao and the entire Solitary Cloud Peak. Seeing this, Granny Long, Ji Tianxing and everyone else opened their eyes wide and their hearts stopped beating. Everyone was silent. After a moment of silence, they came back to their senses and shouted in surprise and worry. Oh my God! Senior sister! She couldn't block it? Impossible. Senior sister blocked the 6th heavenly lightning easily. How could she not block the 7th one? Oh no. Senior sister will be seriously injured even if she doesn't die. What a terrifying heavenly tribulation. If it were any of us, we would have been smashed into ashes. All the gods' disciples and guards were filled with terror. They were extremely fearful of the heavenly tribulation. Yao Yao. Ji Tianxing's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, and his fists were clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. He subconsciously rushed out, wanting to rush up to Solitary Cloud Peak and save Yunyao himself. However, when he was about to rush out, his shoulder was grabbed by an old hand. An unparalleled power came, firmly holding him in place, making him unable to move. He turned his head and saw that it was Granny Long. Granny Long looked at him solemnly, shook her head and said in a deep voice, "Tianxing, don't be impulsive. We have to believe in Yunyao." Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment before he calmed down and suppressed the anxiety and worry in his heart. After all, if he rushed up Solitary Cloud Peak, not only would he not be able to help Yunyao, but he would also anger the will of the heavenly Tao and send down a punishment that could destroy the world. He stood where he was, gazing at the chaotic Solitary Cloud Peak, praying silently in his heart. Around 10 breaths later, the lightning, fire, and wind gradually dissipated. The smoke and dust on Solitary Cloud Peak gradually dissipated. Only then did everyone clearly see that the peak of Solitary Cloud Peak had been shaved off by several tens of feet. The ground was covered with huge gullies and pits, and countless charred stones were scattered everywhere. Yunyao, dressed in a white dress, was kneeling in the ruins with one hand on the ground and the other on the reverse water sword. There was a dark red bloodstain on her pure white dress. Her long hair was messily draped over her shoulders, covering her cheeks. Blood kept dripping from the corner of her mouth, falling on the charred stones. Seeing that Yunyao was not killed by the lightning and her body was intact, everyone was finally relieved. That's great. Eldest senior sister really blocked that bolt of heavenly lightning. I knew it. How could she fail? Haha. Eldest senior sister has successfully passed the tribulation. She will soon break through the tribulation stage and become a new martial lord. She is indeed a top genius, the Divine Master's most valued goddess. She deserves the title. Today's tribulation is rarely seen even in hundreds of years. It is really a blessing for us to be able to witness it with our own eyes. Many gods' disciples and guards cheered with joy. They were excited for Yunyao. Even Ji Tianxing heaved a sigh of relief. The heavy stone in his heart was finally lifted. However, no one noticed. Yunyao was half kneeling on the ground. There was no expression of pain on her face. Instead, there was confusion between her eyebrows. She closed her eyes and silently checked the situation in her body, as if she was trying to solve some mystery. Just a moment ago, the heavenly wind, heavenly fire, and lightning drowned her like a flood. She was prepared to be seriously injured. After she was injured, she would use the immortal divine power to heal her injuries. However, she did not expect that after the violent heavenly fire, heavenly wind, and lightning hit her, they would be completely devoured by something or some kind of power in her body. Most of the power of the lightning was neutralized by the mysterious thing. She was only slightly injured. She still had about 70% of her strength. Strange. What kind of power can devour the lightning, heavenly fire, and heavenly wind? Could it be the immortal divine pearl? Yunyao checked for a while but could not find the reason. She thought it was the effect of the immortal divine power. At this moment, among the crowd of onlookers, there was a sudden exclamation full of doubt. Didn't eldest senior sister pass the tribulation? Why hasn't the tribulation cloud dissipated yet? The sudden exclamation made the excited crowd calm down immediately. They all looked up at the sky. They saw that the whirlpool in the tribulation cloud did not dissipate. Instead, it became bigger. The dark tribulation cloud was dyed with a layer of strange blood red. The lightning flashing in the whirlpool was also covered with a layer of blood red. This scene made Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, and the others worried and anxious. Damn it! Is there an 8th lightning bolt? Ji Tianxing cursed worriedly. Granny Long's pupils contracted. She was worried and surprised at the same time. Yunyao attracted the 8th lightning bolt. It has been 800 years since someone with such talent appeared. No wonder the Divine Master treats Yunyao as his own daughter. With Yunyao's talent, she will definitely become an Einherjar in the future as long as she doesn't die prematurely. However, the more talented she is, the more powerful the lightning bolts are. The deacons and disciples of God were shocked by Granny Long's words. Only now did everyone understand what kind of valiant degree Yunyao's talent and aptitude had reached. However, when they heard Granny Long's last sentence, they were worried about Yunyao again. Ji Tianxing looked up at the blood-red tribulation cloud and the lightning. He frowned and asked in a low voice, "Granny Long, you are very knowledgeable and experienced. Can you tell what kind of lightning this is?" Granny Long stared at the tribulation cloud and observed it for a while. She shook her head helplessly and said, "I have seen more than 100 heavenly tribulations. I know them very well. However, I can't see through Yunyao's heavenly tribulation. She is not an ordinary person. I am afraid that the 8th lightning bolt she attracted is a mutated lightning tribulation." "What? A mutated lightning tribulation?" Ji Tianxing frowned even harder. Granny Long nodded slightly and explained in a low voice, "The mutated lightning tribulation only exists in legends. I have never seen it with my own eyes." Chapter 1749. What? The heavens arranged this for her. Ji Tianxing was dumbfounded. He could not believe it. If someone else had said this, he would have thought it was ridiculous. However, since it came from Granny Long, he had to believe it. Why would the heavens arrange such a strange lightning tribulation for Yao Yao? He furrowed his brows and muttered to himself. Suddenly, he thought of Yunyao's identity and guessed something. Is it because Yao Yao is the reincarnation of goddess Yaoguang? Is that why she has to face such a tribulation? This was just his guess. He could not confirm it yet. At this moment, the 8th lightning tribulation had formed in the tribulation cloud vortex. It was a lightning tribulation that was hundreds of feet long. It looked like a blood-red dragon and it fell from the sky toward Yunyao. Boom. Crack. A deafening boom shook the heavens, shaking the entire Luotian mountain. Many of the god's disciples and guards turned pale from the shock and felt dizzy. Granny Long and Ji Tianxing were not affected at all. They stared at Yunyao. Yunyao had already used her longevity divine power to heal her injuries. She stood on the peak of the mountain. She used the longevity divine light with her left hand and the water reversal divine sword with her right hand. She was going to use her trump card. However, a scene that shocked everyone appeared. Before Yunyao could use her trump card, the blood-red lightning tribulation struck her at an unbelievable speed and drowned her. Boom! There was a deafening sound. Yunyao was covered by the blood-red lightning tribulation. He could not be seen at all. The lone cloud peak shook violently. However, it did not collapse. There was no dust or gravel. The blood-red lightning tribulation disappeared in the blink of an eye. No, it did not disappear. It went into Yunyao's body. Yunyao was still in the posture of wielding her sword and casting spells. However, she was rooted to the ground like a stone statue. He did not move at all. Such a bizarre scene left everyone dumbfounded. Not only the god's disciples, deacons and guards, but even Grandma Long was staring at Yunyao with her eyes wide open. Ji Tianxing also showed a puzzled expression and frowned doubtfully. He stared at Yunyao, observing her condition and sensing her aura. Fortunately, Yunyao was not injured and her life force and magic power aura were normal. Other than being rooted to the ground like a wooden puppet, she didn't seem to be affected at all. Everyone was stunned for a moment and then a burst of discussion broke out. How could this be? Why isn't she moving? Shouldn't the 8th bolt of heavenly lightning destroy the world? How come it didn't even break a single stone? This is too strange. That bolt of heavenly lightning just now was extremely terrifying. I even thought that the solitary cloud summit had been destroyed. I think there's something strange about this heavenly lightning. I'm afraid Yunyao won't be able to neutralize it so easily. That's right. The 8th heavenly lightning should be the final test of the heavenly tribulation. It can't be weaker than the 7th heavenly lightning. Everyone was whispering to each other. There were many different opinions, but no one could figure out what was wrong. Grandma Long frowned and pondered for a long time. Suddenly, she thought of something and her eyes lit up. I understand now. This is not an ordinary heavenly tribulation. This is the inner demon tribulation of the mutated heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianxing had been pondering the whole time, but when he heard Granny Long's words, a look of realization appeared on his face. Inner demon tribulation. Yes, Yao Yao's situation is very similar to the legendary inner demon tribulation. Grandma Long looked at him in surprise. Tianxing, you've heard of the inner demon tribulation too? Yes. Tianxing nodded and explained, the inner demon tribulation only exists in legends. It is said that it's a test given by the heavens to extraordinary talents. Heaven-defying geniuses could ignore all obstacles and advance at a terrifying speed. Nothing could stop them. The only opponent for such talents is themselves. Or rather, their inner demons. Only by defeating their own inner demons can they be called extraordinary talents. When Tianxing explained the inner demon tribulation, the sky was quiet and everyone listened attentively. After he finished, Grandma Long quickly nodded in agreement. That's right. Tianxing's explanation is completely correct. Therefore, the inner demon tribulation is the most powerful, most terrifying and most unpredictable. No external force can defeat it and no one can help Yun Yao. Only by relying on her own willpower and spirit can she defeat the inner demon tribulation. Tianxing added in a low voice with a solemn expression. If Yun Yao fails to pass the tribulation, her divine soul will be destroyed by the inner demon tribulation. Even if her physical body survives, it is equivalent to death. If she can successfully pass the inner demon tribulation, she will be reborn. She will spread her wings and soar into the sky. No power can stop her from rising. After he finished speaking, he looked at Gu Yun Peak with a burning gaze and fixed his gaze on Yun Yao. Yao Yao, nothing must happen to you. No matter what, you must pass this tribulation. He secretly clenched his fists and shouted silently in his heart. At the same time, Yun Yao, who had been motionless, could finally move. She closed her eyes as if she had lost consciousness. She staggered and ran, waving the reverse water divine sword wildly and stabbing at the sky. Although she was as fast as lightning, she kept circling around Gu Yunfeng and never left the mountain peak. Sometimes she waved her palm to cast spells, sometimes she waved her sword to kill. Not long after, she muttered something and shouted in grief and indignation. No. Don't even think about it. Even if I die, I will never give in. Even if the sun and moon are destroyed and heaven and earth no longer exist, my heart will still be there. At first glance, she looked like she had lost her mind and gone crazy. But everyone knew that this was not her intention. She was resisting the most dangerous and rare inner demon tribulation. Tianxing and Grandma Long were extremely worried when they saw Yun Yao's disheveled hair and uncontrollable emotions. Fortunately, Yun Yao gradually calmed down after 100 breaths of time. She stabbed the reverse water divine sword into the ground, formed a hand seal and sat down cross-legged. Then a dazzling golden light surged from her body, and her aura became holy and solemn. An illusory figure of a goddess that was 300 meters tall and formed from golden light appeared behind her. Half of the golden projection was dyed red by the blood-red light. The holy golden light and the strange blood-red light were in a stalemate. The two were devouring and resisting each other. Sometimes one was strong and the other was weak, and sometimes one was weak and the other was strong. Although no one knew what was going on, they could guess that Yun Yao was resisting the inner demon tribulation and had reached the most critical juncture. Everyone held their breaths and stared at Yun Yao without blinking, hoping that she would succeed. Unknowingly, a quarter of an hour passed. The holy golden light slowly gained the upper hand and dispersed all the blood-red light. When the projection of the goddess turned pure gold and no longer had any blood-red light, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky finally dissipated. Without a doubt, Yun Yao had successfully resolved the inner demon tribulation. Chapter 1750. The shadow of the goddess behind Yun Yao slowly retracted into her body. Zhoosh. After the whirlpool of tribulation clouds in the sky dissipated, it turned into colorful flowing lights that covered the sky and earth, pouring down like a tide. Yun Yao sat upright on the ground. Her expression was calm and serene as she circulated her energy and devoured the five-colored brilliance. That was a powerful and sacred divine light. After successfully passing the heavenly tribulation, she would definitely receive rewards and feedback. Yun Yao bathed in the colorful divine light. The bloodstains on her body quickly disappeared, and her injuries healed quickly. Her strength was also skyrocketing. She broke through the primordial soul stage and reached the first stage of the tribulation stage. Only after an entire hour did the five-colored divine light disappear, completely refined by her. The sky became calm and clear again. The blue sky and the golden sun reappeared. Yun Yao finished her cultivation and stood up slowly. She stood at the top of Solitary Cloud Peak. At that moment her white clothes and long hair were as white as snow. Her body was dyed with a layer of gold by the morning sun. She was as sacred and majestic as a goddess. A majestic aura was emitted from her body and lingered in the sky. The god's disciples and guards standing in the sky felt an invisible pressure. They could not help but be in awe. Without a doubt, Yun Yao had reached the tribulation stage and was qualified to be called a martial lord. Granny Long revealed a gratified smile and said excitedly, "That's great. Yun Yao has finally passed the heavenly tribulation and reached the tribulation stage. Moreover, she is the only peerless genius who has passed 8 heavenly tribulations in the past 1,000 years. Now that she has reached the first stage of the tribulation stage, her strength and foundation are comparable to those of the 3rd or 4th stage of the tribulation stage. Her future is limitless." The deacons nodded in agreement. They were relieved. Many God's disciples and guards were envious and amazed. They admired Yun Yao very much. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky and looked at Yun Yao with a smile. His eyes were filled with relief. At this moment Yun Yao stepped into the sky and left Solitary Cloud Peak. She flew towards the crowd. She flew straight to Ji Tianxing and stood in front of him. Ji Tianxing smiled and asked, "Yao Yao, how are you feeling now? Have you recovered from your injuries?" Yun Yao nodded slightly and said, "I'm fine now. After successfully passing the tribulation, the divine light from the heavens will heal most of my injuries." Granny Long and a few deacons flew over and asked her about her situation. A few disciples of God also gathered around and congratulated her. Yun Yao exchanged a few pleasantries with everyone before leaving with Ji Tianxing and returning to Cloud Water Palace. Granny Long didn't stay any longer and hurried back to her residence to report the news to Martial God Luo Shui. Only the deacons, guards, and disciples of God refused to leave. They stayed around the Solitary Cloud Peak and discussed excitedly. Cloud Water Palace in an elegant and cozy room. Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing were sitting at the table and talking in low voices. "Yao Yao, was the 8th lightning tribulation you just experienced the legendary inner demon tribulation?" Ji Tianxing looked at Yun Yao with concern. Yun Yao nodded and said, "That's right. It was the inner demon tribulation." Ji Tianxing thought for a while and asked, "What was the inner demon tribulation like? How did you resolve it?" "My inner demon tribulation." Yun Yao frowned slightly. After thinking for a while she shook her head and said, "The process was very complicated and messy. I can't explain it in a few words. However, the 2 most important points in the inner demon tribulation are the demons and goddess Yaoguang." Ji Tianxing frowned and asked, "What do you mean?" Yun Yao explained, "I inherited goddess Yaoguang's divine Tao inheritance. No matter if it's goddess Yaoguang or me, we have a blood feud with the demons. In the illusory realm of the inner demon tribulation, I saw countless scenes of the Devil Clan and fought countless battles with Devil Clan experts. I also awakened some of goddess Yaoguang's memories and saw the ancient divine battle. I even saw the future where we worked together to deal with the ancestor fiend god." "I see." Ji Tianxing showed a look of realization. He nodded and asked, "What was the result?" Yun Yao's face darkened and her eyes dimmed. She said, "It was a narrow escape." Ji Tianxing fell silent. His eyes, which were full of anticipation, also dimmed. After a while he shook his head and said, "Don't worry. That's just the future you saw in the inner demon tribulation. Maybe it's also a test from the heavens. The real future is full of unknowns. It's hard to predict. No one can determine the result. I believe that as long as we work hard enough, grow fast enough, and become strong enough, we will have the chance to kill the ancestor fiend god in the future." Yun Yao nodded and said, "Yes, I understand." Ji Tianxing continued, "All right, Yao Yao, you should rest for 2 days. When your condition stabilizes, we will set off for the Mountain of Flames." Yun Yao responded. She got up and walked into the secret room to adjust her breathing. She had just reached the tribulation realm and needed to cultivate for 2 days to consolidate her martial arts realm. Ji Tianxing was not idle either. He made preparations for the trip to the Mountain of Flames and then meditated. Early in the morning 2 days later, Ji Tianxing was meditating and adjusting his breathing. Suddenly, a guard came to report that a young man and woman were asking for an audience. The two people claimed to be Ji Tianxing's servants, named Shi Bai and Zhou Xian. Hearing this news, Ji Tianxing hurriedly asked the guard to let them in. Not long after, Ji Bai and Zhou Xian entered the Cloud Water Palace and came to the room for an audience. Ji Bai greets Master. Zhou Xian greets Master. Ji Bai and Zhou Xian stood side by side in the room and bowed respectfully to Ji Tianxing. No need for formalities. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and looked at the two of them. He found that they were travel-worn and there was a hint of worry and tiredness between their brows. Moreover, their auras were a little chaotic and there was blood aura on their bodies. It was obvious that they had been injured. Ji Tianxing sensed that the situation was not good, so he asked, Shi Bai, Zhou Xian, why did you return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain for more than 2 months? Looking at your complexions, you seem to have suffered heavy injuries. What the hell is going on? Shi Bai cupped his hands and was about to explain. However, Zhou Xian took a step forward and said in front of him, Master, we did encounter some trouble when we returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain this time, but we easily resolved it. We came back late and made Master worry. Please punish us. Ji Tianxing understood their temperament. He knew that as a woman Zhou Xian was more meticulous. Ji Bai had always been cold and his thoughts were simple. He guessed that Zhou Xian was hiding something, so he asked in a dignified tone, Zhou Xian, you don't have to hide it from me. I have already detected that not only do you have blood aura, you also have devil aura. Tell me the truth, did you fight with the devil clan? This. Zhou Xian was seen through by Ji Tianxing and was immediately embarrassed, not knowing how to answer. Ji Tianxing did not ask her and his gaze fell on Ji Bai. Chapter 1751. Ji Bai had never lied, especially to Ji Tianxing. This was his nature, he would rather not open his mouth and not speak nonsense. After a long silence he cupped his hands towards Ji Tianxing and explained, reporting to Master, Zhou Xian did not intend to hide anything, I just did not want you to worry. Of course I understand. Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a deep voice, I just want to know what happened. Ji Bai thought for a moment and replied, Master's guess is correct, we have indeed encountered trouble and the other party is indeed a demon. After all, Tianzhu Mountain is in the north of Tianjue Kingdom, adjacent to the 3 divine kingdoms and Dark North Mountain. The demons of Dark North Mountain are different from before, they are no longer low-key and have become unusually active recently. Granny Long had already revealed similar information before, so Ji Tianxing had already understood the situation. Hearing Ji Bai's answer, he was not surprised and continued to ask, did you two have a conflict with the demons, or did the demons take action against Tianzhu Mountain? Ji Bai and Zhou Xian were startled for a moment, and their eyes flashed with a strange light. Obviously, the two of them did not expect Ji Tianxing's intuition to be so sharp that he could see through the details with a single glance. Zhou Xian quickly explained, Master, please do not worry about this matter, Tianzhu Mountain can handle it. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said with a solemn expression, so, I guessed right, the demons really did make a move against Tianzhu Mountain? Ji Bai added, it's just a small-scale harassment, Master does not need to take it to heart. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and did not say anything. Even if Tianzhu Mountain was attacked by the demons, he could not help now. His top priority was to rush to Blazing Mountain as soon as possible to gather materials to repair the divine sword. After a moment of silence he said in a deep voice, ever since the ancestral devil god came to Shenwu continent, the demons of Dark North Mountain have a leader and have become even more rampant. Dark North Mountain has been dormant for tens of thousands of years, and they are strong enough to wait for their ancestral devil god to appear. Looking at the current situation, the demons' ambition is difficult to contain, and I am afraid that they will bring chaos to the world. However, with our current situation, it is not suitable for us to confront the demons head-on. Ji Bai and Zhou Xian both nodded in agreement. Master's wise. The Great Immortal said the same thing. Great Immortal, you've always reminded us that we've waited for 1,000 years and we've endured it. Now that Master has appeared, all the more we can't be anxious. We must be even more calm and careful. Ji Tianxing nodded and ordered, Ji Bai, Zhou Xian, you two go into the sword world first and focus on recuperating. I have important matters to attend to and will be leaving the Luotian mountain in a few days to head to the ruins of gods. I'll call you out when I need you." Ji Bai and Shou Hei cupped their hands in salute at the same time. Then Ji Tianxing took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven, opened the entrance to the Sword World and put the two of them inside. Not long after, Yunyao also finished her cultivation and walked out of the secret room. After 2 days of rest and recuperation, her mental state and magic power had reached their peak, and her martial arts realm had also been consolidated. She instructed Black Eagle and Golden Dragon before following Ji Tianxing out of the Cloud Water Palace. After the two of them left the Luotian mountain, Ji Tianxing summoned Black Dragon and rode it towards the ruins of gods. Ever since Black Dragon swallowed the divine dragon crystal, it had been cultivating in seclusion for the past few months. Its strength had increased rapidly and its body had also undergone some changes. Now it had reached the 7th level of the Essence Soul realm, and its body was more than 2,000 feet long. However, this was only the initial results, and definitely not the final effect of the divine dragon crystal. The true effect of the divine dragon crystal had yet to be unleashed. Black Dragon still needed a few decades to completely absorb the power of the divine dragon crystal. Unknowingly, a month passed. Black Dragon carried Ji Tianxing and Yunyao and flew across the sky at lightning speed, advancing towards the northwest. In the first half of the month, Black Dragon traveled through the Luoshui divine nation. Everything was peaceful and they didn't encounter any dangers. However, in the next half a month, the group entered the Heaven Extinction Divine Kingdom's territory. This region was the most desolate territory in the Heaven Extinction Divine Kingdom. It was close to the ruins of gods and North Underworld Mountain, so the environment was dangerous. As Black Dragon traveled, it often encountered danger. For example, there were attacks from powerful Fey beasts, as well as groups of adventurer teams attacking it. The Fey beasts that lurked in the mountains and rivers were powerful Fey beasts at the Tribulation Transcendence realm as long as they could occupy an area and declare themselves overlords. When they sensed Black Dragon's aura, they were like hungry wolves that had seen a lamb. They only wanted to pounce on it and devour it clean. Ji Tianxing and Yunyao could easily deal with these Tribulation Transcendence realm Fey beasts. They could either kill them or repel them. What troubled Ji Tianxing and Yunyao the most were the adventurer teams that licked blood and committed all sorts of evil. These adventurer teams were formed by warriors at the Essence Soul realm and above. There were at most dozens of them and at least a dozen. The leaders of these adventurer teams were often at the Tribulation Transcendence realm. To put it nicely, these people were called adventurer teams. With rich experience and strength, they explored all kinds of ruins and forbidden areas. In fact, they were a group of desperados who committed all sorts of crimes. In order to plunder resources and wealth, they did not hesitate to rob, kill, and commit arson. On the way to the ruins of gods, Black Dragon encountered 2 adventurer teams one after another. Without exception, when the 2 adventurer teams saw Black Dragon and found that there were only Ji Tianxing and Yunyao on its back, they both had evil intentions. In the world of martial arts, divine dragons were unattainable. Only the 3 martial gods could control them. Flood dragons were more numerous and more common. They were the mounts and pet beasts that countless experts dreamed of. When the warriors of the 2 adventurer teams saw the legendary Black Dragon, of course, they pounced on it without caring about their own safety, trying to take it for themselves. In order to achieve their goal, the 2 adventurer teams were unscrupulous. Traps, ambushes, poisons, assassinations, and sieges. They took turns to use all sorts of methods just to kill Ji Tianxing and Yunyao and snatch Black Dragon. However, there was no doubt about the outcome. The first adventurer team had fewer people, only about a dozen warriors. They were basically at the Essence Soul realm, and their leader was at the First Firmament Tribulation Transcendence realm. When dealing with this adventurer team, Ji Tianxing and Yunyao used lightning-fast methods to kill more than a dozen people. The remaining adventurers were scared out of their wits as they fled. As for the second adventurer team, they had more people. There were more than 30 of them, and all of them were elites at the 4th Firmament Essence Soul realm and above. The leader and the strategist were experts at the 2nd and 3rd Firmament Tribulation Transcendence realm. The members of this adventurer team knew how to divide the work and work together. They each had their own duties and their methods were cunning and changeable. They were very difficult to deal with. Ji Tianxing and Yunyao tangled with this adventurer team for 9 days and 9 nights, traversing 500,000 kilometers. Both sides fought with wits and courage, using all sorts of methods and mystic techniques. Finally, the outcome was decided. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were safe and sound, but Black Dragon was slightly injured. Chapter 1752. More than 40 days later, the Black Dragon left the Heaven's divine nation and entered the ruins of God. The vast and boundless ruins of God was covered with desolate grayish-brown mountain ranges that crisscrossed. The sky was filled with gray clouds and gloomy. The ground was also filled with a withered aura. Once one entered the ruins of God, one would feel depressed and their mood would become even more depressed. After what happened before, the Black Dragon already had experience. Even without Ji Tianxing's reminder, it knew that the ruins of God was extremely dangerous, so it became even more cautious. That evening, the Black Dragon was flying in the dark sky. Ji Tianxing sat on the back of the dragon, holding a map in his hand as he carefully examined it. According to the map, the blazing mountain was in the depths of the ruins of God, more than 2 million miles away from him. With the Black Dragon's flying speed, it would take about half a month to reach. Yun Yao sat beside Ji Tianxing silently meditating. In the past month or so, her strength had been consolidated and her fighting strength had increased by a lot. After Ji Tianxing kept the map, she also finished her meditation and opened her eyes. She turned her head to look at Ji Tianxing beside her and asked, "Tianxing, how long until we reach the blazing mountain?" Ji Tianxing replied, "If nothing unexpected happens, half a month is enough." Yun Yao nodded and asked again, "Tianxing, we have already left the Luotian mountain for more than 40 days. Logically speaking, you should be about to undergo your tribulation, right?" Ji Tianxing revealed a trace of a smile and said playfully, "That's right. These few days I often feel that the heavens are sending me a message. My heavenly tribulation will descend in about half a month." Yun Yao frowned and said worriedly, "At that time wouldn't we be in the blazing mountain?" She thought for a moment and said with a solemn expression, "Tianxing, the blazing mountain is extremely dangerous and is not suitable for you to undergo your tribulation. Accidents will definitely happen. In my opinion, we should find a hidden place so that no one will disturb you when you undergo your tribulation." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "I understand. You don't have to worry. Let's get to the Mountain of Flames first." Seeing that he had a card up his sleeve, Yun Yao felt much more at ease. Soon half a month had passed. That afternoon, the Black Dragon carried Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao and was about to arrive at the Flaming Mountain. While they were still several hundred miles away, the two of them could already see from high up in the sky that a sea of flames had appeared in the desolate mountain range ahead. It was an area shrouded in scarlet flames. There were several towering mountain ranges, all of which were emitting scarlet light and surrounded by fierce flames. Even from hundreds of miles away, Ji Tianxing could clearly feel the terrifyingly high temperature of the flames. The air was filled with a scorching hot aura, and even traces of dark red fire could be vaguely seen. As expected of the Mountain of Flames, everything within a few hundred miles is a forbidden zone. Warriors below the primordial soul realm are unable to stay here. Ji Tianxing sighed as he looked at the flaming mountain in front of him. Yun Yao stood side by side with him on the dragon's back. She looked around with a deep gaze and observed the situation. "Tianxing, this place has already become a place of trouble. I'm afraid there are several groups of people lurking within 1,000 miles. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said with a playful smile, "It seems that the news of the appearance of the glazed fire dragon has spread. That's why it has attracted the attention of various experts." He released his divine sense and extended it in all directions, carefully inspecting the sky and the earth. Soon he discovered that there were indeed traces left behind by martial experts within a few dozen miles of the surrounding area. Yun Yao reminded him again, "Tianxing, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, you'd better put away the Black Dragon." Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. "It's too eye-catching for us to come on the Black Dragon. It's probably already attracted the attention of some experts." As he spoke, he took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven and put the Black Dragon into the Sword World. At the same time, he summoned Ji Bai and Shohei and asked them to follow him secretly. After they were ready, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao flew across the sky and rushed towards the Flaming Mountain. As the two of them quickly approached the Flaming Mountain, there were several pairs of eyes spying on them in the mountains and rivers within a radius of hundreds of miles. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao arrived near the Flaming Mountain. The closer they got to the flaming mountain, the thinner the air between heaven and earth, and the more terrifying the temperature became. The two of them stood 50 miles away from the flaming mountain. They stopped in the sky and observed the flaming mountain at a close distance. They saw a few towering mountain ranges that were thousands of feet tall between the mountains. Those mountain ranges crisscrossed and stretched for tens of thousands of miles. They couldn't see the end at a glance. The towering mountain ranges that were thousands of feet tall were very steep and almost straight. The surrounding mountain ranges were grayish-brown and covered with weathered rocks. However, the flaming mountain was different. The mountain was dark red and revealed a faint golden color. The mountain had been burned by the glass heavenly fire. After tens of thousands of years, the impurities had long been removed and it had become as smooth and shiny as a glazed tile. In addition, the mountain contained rich mineral resources. All kinds of mineral veins and gems had been burned and tempered by the glass heavenly fire, which was why they had a faint golden color. Xianxia had no doubt that even a few stones dug out from the flaming mountain were valuable treasures to ordinary cultivators. While he and Yunyao were observing the flaming mountain, the terrifying high temperature roasted them. There were even wisps of flames floating in the sky that kept flying towards them. Every flame was as thin as a strand of hair, but it contained a sharp and violent aura. He and Yunyao could only use their dermic powers to form a thin shield on the surface of their bodies to resist the corrosion of the flames and high temperature. At this moment, two figures flew over from afar and headed straight for the flaming mountain. They were two powerhouses, one old and one young. The old man had white hair and a beard, and he wore a purple robe. He held a golden horsetail whisk in his hand and wore a crown with 3 flowers and 7 stars on his head. He had the aura of an otherworldly expert. Following behind the old man was a young man dressed in black martial arts attire. This person's body was tall and sturdy, and his face and aura were quite strong. His eyes were cold and sharp. He carried a black heavy sword that was as wide as a bench, and his movements carried the aura of wind and thunder. He was obviously a powerhouse in the Tribulation Transcendence realm. When they passed by Yunyao and Xianxia, the two of them paused for a moment. The purple-robed old man tilted his head slightly and sized up Xianxia and Yunyao. He said with a serious expression, "Young man, this is not a place for you to come. Leave quickly." Xianxia frowned slightly and said expressionlessly, "What does it have to do with you where we are going? This flaming mountain is not your territory." The purple-robed old man was stunned for a moment, and a sneer flashed across his eyes. He shook his head and did not speak anymore, as if he could not be bothered to lower himself to Xianxia's level. On the other hand, the young man in black was quite dissatisfied with Xianxia's attitude. He shouted coldly, "Kid, be more polite with your words." Chapter 1753. The young man's tone and expression were somewhat overbearing. The purple-robed elder thought even more highly of himself and was too lazy to waste his breath. Xianxia could not help but sneer. He said indifferently, "I'm not familiar with you. I don't need your kind reminder." Hearing this, the purple-robed elder frowned slightly, revealing a hint of displeasure in his eyes. The young man's expression became colder and colder. He glared at Xianxia with a sharp gaze and shouted angrily, "Brat, you really don't know how to appreciate favors. My martial uncle is the famous Brightsword Martial Lord. It is your fortune that he is willing to remind you." "Brightsword Martial Lord?" Xianxia raised his eyebrows. The young man revealed an arrogant expression. He raised his chin and said, "That's right. Now you know how stupid you are, right? Apologize to my martial uncle immediately. Perhaps my martial uncle will be magnanimous and forgive your ignorant offense." The sneer on Xianxia's face became even more pronounced. He said with a mocking tone, "Hee, what Brightsword Martial Lord? I've never heard of him. You'd better enjoy this so-called blessing for yourself. As for apologizing, don't even think about it." "Brat." The young man was ridiculed and became even angrier. He shouted angrily, "I'll give you one last chance. If you don't apologize, you'll have to bear the consequences." As he spoke, he raised his right hand and grabbed the hilt of the heavy sword, as if he was about to draw his sword. "I'd like to see what kind of ability you have to be so arrogant and overbearing." Xianxia did not budge an inch as he looked at him indifferently. A black light flashed in his right hand and the sword of burial of heaven appeared. Seeing this, the two of them seemed to be at loggerheads and were about to attack at any moment. The young man was already riding a tiger and could not back down. He could not stop because of his face. At this moment, Bright Sword Martial Lord raised his hand and said expressionlessly, "Qin Yu, don't be presumptuous, lest you delay the proper business." The young man named Qin Yu furrowed his brows and said unwillingly, "Martial uncle, but this kid is too arrogant." Honorable Sword Martial Lord said without changing his expression, "Some young people don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, so how can we lower ourselves to their level? Isn't that a disgrace to this monarch's status? People who don't know what's good for them will be taught a lesson sooner or later." Qin Yu let go of the sword hilt and withdrew his right hand. He cupped his hands and said, "Martial uncle is right, Qin Yu will remember." Finished speaking, he fiercely glared at Ji Tianqing before following Bright Sword Martial Lord and flying away. The two of them flew across the sky at lightning speed. Soon they entered the flaming mountain and disappeared. Yun Yao frowned and said in an indifferent tone, "There are always some self-righteous people who take advantage of their seniority and want to teach others. They even think that they have noble character and unquestionable integrity. What a joke." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Yes, there are nosy people everywhere." Finished speaking, he pondered for a moment, then analyzed. Although that honorable sword martial lord is annoying, he's still considered a righteous martial artist of the profound sect. The reason why he stopped Qin Yu is probably because he's in a hurry to enter the flaming mountain to deal with some important matter. It's very likely that it's related to the glazed fire dragon. Yun Yao nodded slightly and added, "There's another reason. There are too many people here and there are also a few groups of experts hiding in the dark. Honorable Sword Martial Lord doesn't want to cause too much trouble. Let's go, let's also enter the flaming mountain to take a look." Ji Tianqing stopped talking about this matter and immediately flew forward. Yun Yao hesitated for a moment then secretly asked, "Tianqing, are we really going in now? I'm afraid your heavenly tribulation is coming, right?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "It should be in the next 2 days but I'm not sure which day it will be. Yao, don't worry. Let's enter the flaming mountain and take a look at the situation. It won't be too late to make a decision." As his voice fell, 2 more groups of martial artists appeared in the sky not far away. One of the groups of martial artists had 3 people, all of whom were Tribulation Realm experts. Leading them was an old woman with a head full of white hair. She held a purple jade dragon-headed walking stick and wore a luxurious robe with astral patterns. Behind her were 2 middle-aged men dressed in armor and wielding swords. They were dressed as guards. It was obvious that the 3 of them came from powerful family clans and had extraordinary heritage. They flew across the sky as fast as lightning and flew straight into the flaming mountain. Their figures were engulfed by the sea of flames. As for the other group of martial artists, there were 9 of them. They were all middle-aged men with powerful auras. The leader was dressed in red robes and carried a saber on his back. His body emitted a domineering and bloody aura. The other 8 people had strength at the 6th or 7th firmament essence soul realm. Their skills and auras were rather elite. This was clearly an adventurer team. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A beam of light flashed as the adventurer team stopped in front of Ji Tianqing. Everyone stared at Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao as they sized them up indifferently. However, everyone only sized up Ji Tianqing before their gazes landed on Yun Yao. They revealed looks of amazement and shock. There were even a few adventurers who had covetous looks in their eyes. However, they quickly concealed it. The leading red-robed man crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled at Ji Tianqing. He said, "Little brother, I'm the leader of the Wild Thunder Adventurer Team Lei Kuang. The both of you are so young, yet you dare to explore the ruins of God. Your strength and guts are extraordinary. I admire both of you so." Without waiting for Lei Kuang to finish his sentence, Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "We are not interested in an adventurer team. If you wish to invite us to join, you don't have to say it." Lei Kuang choked on the second half of his sentence as the smile on his face froze. The few fierce-looking adventurers immediately revealed their anger as they looked sharply at Ji Tianqing. However, Lei Kuang quickly regained his composure and waved his hand at the adventurers behind him. He looked calmly at Ji Tianqing and continued, "Little brother, you are very confident, but do you know where this place is? The famous Flaming Mountain. one of the most dangerous forbidden areas in the ruins of God. Don't blame me for not reminding you. With your strength and adventure experience, do you think you can have designs on the glazed fire dragon? You are definitely courting death. Tianxia glanced at him indifferently and said indifferently, "You don't have to worry about that." Lei Kuang frowned and sighed. "Well, to each his own. I won't force you. When you have thought it through, come and find me. The Wild Thunder Adventurer team will still accept you." After saying that, Lei Kuang led the 8 adventurers away and flew toward the flaming mountain. The adventurers were a little angry and secretly asked, "Leader, why are you so good-tempered today? You even called that kid brother?" "Boss, that kid is so arrogant. Why don't you let us teach him a lesson? That kid doesn't know what's good for him. Boss, why did you give him a chance?" Lei Kuang grinned and revealed a mocking sneer. He said in a sinister tone, "Humph, what do you know? I'm casting a long line to catch a big fish. When that kid enters the flaming mountain, his life will no longer be in his hands." Chapter 1754. After the Wild Thunder adventurers left, Tianxia and Yun Yao rushed to the blazing mountain. During this time, 2 more groups of Tribulation Realm powerhouses emerged from the mountains and flew towards the blazing mountain. These powerhouses all had different appearances, and it was obvious that they came from different parts of the Shenwu continent. However, they all had the same goal: the glazed fire dragon in the blazing mountain. Tianxia and Yun Yao flew towards the blazing mountain at a leisurely pace. They were not anxious at all. Both of them knew that whether or not they could obtain the glazed fire dragon had nothing to do with the time they entered the blazing mountain. The more impatient a person was, the easier it was for them to make mistakes and suffer losses. Not long after, the 2 arrived at the edge of the blazing mountain. The air was filled with scorching heat, and layers of scarlet flames with hints of gold rushed towards them like huge waves. Tianxia and Yun Yao both used their magic power to form an icy blue shield around their bodies to protect themselves. Under the high temperature and the scarlet flames, the icy blue shield continuously evaporated into a hazy mist, and its defensive power was constantly being weakened. The 2 of them needed to continuously provide magic power to maintain the shield's integrity and operation. In other words, once the 2 of them stepped into the blazing mountain, they would continuously consume their magic power. If they did not leave the range of the blazing mountain before their magic power ran out, their lives would be in danger. Yun Yao stared at the blazing mountain in front of her and said solemnly, "Tianxia, we saw it with our own eyes. Several groups of powerhouses have already entered the blazing mountain. There must be a large number of powerhouses gathered in the blazing mountain now. We need to be careful and not let our guard down." Tianxia nodded. "I understand. The scarlet flames in the periphery of the blazing mountain are not too strong, and the temperature is not too high either. Even a primordial spirit realm powerhouse can last for half a day. Don't use the water reversal sword for now. It's our greatest trump card and we can only use it at a critical moment." Yun Yao naturally understood what he meant and nodded. The 2 of them then stepped into the scarlet sea of flames and entered the blazing mountain. As soon as they entered the range of the blazing mountain, the 2 of them were engulfed by the sea of flames, and the surrounding temperature doubled. Violent waves of fire continued to attack, blocking the 2 of them from advancing. There were also countless wisps of flames that shot out like a rain of arrows, constantly bombarding the 2's mana shields. The 2 of them were in the flaming mountain and their flying speed was reduced by 40%. As they flew deeper into the mountain range, the 2 of them lowered their heads and observed their surroundings. Beneath his feet was a towering mountain range that was thousands of feet tall. The mountain was crimson in color and emitted a faint golden light. The mountains and the earth had been scorched for tens of thousands of years, turning into a translucent glaze that contained rich metallic minerals. Tianxia released his divine sense and immediately discovered that there were large amounts of metal ores hidden inside the mountain. However, the temperature inside the mountain was even more terrifying. It was also quite difficult to enter the mountain to mine the ores. The fiery mountain covered an area of 1 million miles, and was formed by dozens of magnificent mountain ranges. The terrain was quite complicated. The 2 of them identified a direction and flew straight into the depths of the mountain range. About an hour later, the 2 of them had flown a few thousand miles away. At that moment, Ji Tianxing suddenly discovered a group of Essence Soul Realm warriors in the mountain range to his left. They were digging for ores in the mountain. It was a group of adventurers. There were a total of 12 of them, and their leader had the strength of a first firmament tribulation transcendence cultivator. The strength of the 11 adventurers was at the 6th firmament essence soul realm and above. The group of adventurers had excavated a small passageway in the rock wall halfway up the mountain that led straight into the interior of the mountain. 2 adventurers stayed behind to guard the passageway while the rest entered the belly of the mountain. They quickly excavated the ores and plundered the various gems and ores. Ji Tianxing probed and discovered that there were 7 ores of different sizes hidden in the mountain. The ores that the group of adventurers had excavated were the largest fire spirit gold ore, and also the most valuable one. The adventurers were very skilled and appeared to be very experienced. It was obvious at a glance that they often did such things. Ji Tianxing only observed for about 100 seconds before the group of adventurers dug up more than 1,000 ores. They were even lucky enough to dig up 3 fire spirit gold crystals. When Yunyao noticed that he was observing the others excavating, she asked with a voice transmission, "Tianxing, what materials do you lack to repair the divine sword?" Ji Tianxing answered calmly, "I'm still lacking 2 materials. Wind lightning meteorite iron and golden crow copper marrow." Yunyao frowned and thought for a moment before persuading, "Those 2 materials are top refinement materials. They are extremely rare. I wonder if the fiery mountain has them?" "Let's hope so." Ji Tianxing smiled as he consoled himself. At that moment, the 2 adventurers guarding the passageway's entrance sensed the existence of Ji Tianxing and Yunyao. Seeing that the duo had stayed near the mountain for a long time without any intention of leaving, the 2 adventurers raised their guard and revealed a strong sense of hostility. Ji Tianxing could not be bothered with the 2 adventurers. He did not want to waste time here either. He was about to leave with Yunyao. But at that moment, more than a dozen fire demons that were 100 feet tall and had ferocious appearances suddenly emerged from the mountain's interior. Every fire demon had the strength of a 7th or 8th firmament essence soul. They exuded a violent and evil aura. Their sudden appearance alarmed the 10 adventurers. They stopped excavating the ores and charged at the fire demons with their swords and sabers. The 2 parties began fighting in the mountain. Their battle produced loud rumbling sounds that shook the heavens and earth. The powerful aftershocks of the battle struck the mountain wantonly. They erupted from the passageway, forming a huge 5-colored pillar of light that shot into the sky. What surprised Ji Tianxing was that the mountain was abnormally sturdy. It was like a Dharma treasure that had been tempered thousands of times. More than a dozen adventurers and more than a dozen fire demons exchanged dozens of blows in the belly of the mountain. The mountain shook incessantly, but it did not collapse. About 30 seconds later, the adventurer team suffered heavy casualties. 4 people died on the spot and 6 were severely injured. Only the first firmament tribulation transcendence adventurer team leader was able to withstand the fire demon's attacks and was not injured. He led the 6 surviving adventurers and rushed out of the passageway as fast as lightning. They flew out without looking back. 9 fire demons chased after them. They roared as they flew across the sky and began their pursuit of the adventurer team. In just a few seconds, the adventurers and the fire demons disappeared in the crimson sea of fire. Upon seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing and Yunyao exchanged glances. Their eyes turned solemn. This is only the periphery of the flaming mountain. There are so many fiendish demons lurking in the mountain. If we enter the depths of the flaming mountain, we will probably encounter even more powerful fiendish demons. It's no wonder those adventurers are all desperados. They walk the line between life and death all day long. They are probably used to it. That's why they treat life so lightly. Chapter 1755. In the next 6 hours, Ji Tianxing and Yunyao flew more than 15,000 kilometers. Along the way, the 2 of them encountered another group of adventurers. The difference was that there were fewer adventurers in this group. There were only 4 of them. The 4 adventurers were all young men and women. Their attire was rather special and memorable. There was a red-haired man who was as strong as an iron tower, a weak young master in a white robe, a hot woman in a leather coat, and a woman in a long dress with a zither on her back. The 4 of them had reached the 2nd stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm and had mastered powerful secret techniques. They cooperated very well. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao encountered them, the four of them were surrounded by more than 20 lava giants. The lava giants hid deep underground. They usually hid in the lava and lived by devouring mineral veins and spiritual fire. They were very tall and burly. Their bodies seemed to be made of rock and metal. Their bodies contained a violent power that could destroy the world. The four young adventurers used all their strength and various secret techniques to barely block the lava giants' attacks. However, it was very difficult for them to kill those lava giants. It was almost impossible for them to escape the encirclement. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao observed for a while and realized that the four adventurers did not look like ordinary adventurers. They were more like genius disciples of some large factions. Therefore, Ji Tianxing decided to save them after weighing the pros and cons for a while. He and Yun Yao worked together, each using a powerful secret skill. With a thunderous momentum, they instantly killed the four lava giants. A gap was immediately torn open in the lava giants' encirclement. With their help, the four young geniuses desperately broke out of the encirclement and killed a few lava giants together. Only then did they manage to escape. The group did not continue to fight. After breaking out of the encirclement, they left and escaped. Those lava giants had violent power and strong defense, but speed was their weakness. In just 100 breaths of time, the group shook off the dozen lava giants that were chasing after them. The group fled to a 10,000 feet tall glazed mountain and temporarily stopped to rest. Only now did the four young experts relax as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They quickly bowed to Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao and thanked them sincerely. The white-robed young man who was the leader of the group even took out 2 superior-grade tribulation pills and gave them to Ji Tianxing as a thank-you gift. Ji Tianxing chatted with the other party for a while before he understood the situation of this adventurer team. It turned out that these four young geniuses were all from the Heaven and Divine Nation, and they were the elite experts of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance. It was Ji Tianxing's first time hearing about the Broken Heaven Alliance. After asking the white-robed young master, he found out that the Broken Sky Alliance was not under the jurisdiction of any empire. It was an alliance formed by martial Dao experts. At the same time, the Broken Sky Alliance was one of the top 10 martial arts organizations on the Divine Martial Continent. As long as one was a cultivator above the primordial spirit realm, abiding by the rules of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance and acknowledging its ideals, they could apply to join. The Broken Heaven Alliance had over 100,000 members, and they were spread all over the Heaven and Divine Nation. No matter which divine nation, race, or force they were from, as long as they met the requirements, they could join the Broken Sky Alliance. The Broken Sky Alliance treated all members equally, rewarding them based on their contributions and assigning them positions based on their strength and contributions. These four young experts were all geniuses with outstanding talent and ambition. Of course, although they looked young, they had actually lived for 200 to 300 years. They wanted to make a name for themselves, so they formed an adventurer team and came to the Flaming Mountain to search for the Golden Lotus of Fire. Every Golden Lotus of Fire was a rare treasure that was hard to come by in 100 years, and they were the best of the best among spirit herbs. If they could find 2 or more Golden Lotuses of Fire, the 4 of them would accumulate a lot of contributions and qualify to run for the position of deacon. After they entered the Flaming Mountain, they tried their best to sneak into the depths of the ground. Unfortunately, they had just entered the underground lava lake, and before they could find the Golden Lotus of Fire, they alerted the lava giant hiding in the lava lake. Of course, what happened next was self-explanatory. After the white-robed young master finished telling the story, a smile of relief appeared on his fair and handsome face. He cupped his fists at Ji Tianxing and said, "Today, if it weren't for the 2 of you, we would have died here. The 4 of us will remember the kindness of our 2 benefactors in our hearts. In the future, if you need anything, please come to the Broken Sky Alliance to find us. I am Li Gan, this is Zhao Xian, and that is junior sister Qing." The white-robed young master, Li Gan, introduced his companions to Ji Tianxing. His words and actions were quite graceful. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said calmly, "Young Master Li, you don't need to say any more words of thanks. We still have important matters to attend to, so we will take our leave." Seeing that he was about to leave, Li Gan hurriedly raised his hand and said, "Benefactor, please wait. If I'm not wrong, the 2 of you are going to the depths of the Flaming Mountain to search for the whereabouts of the glazed fire dragon." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and did not comment. Seeing that he did not answer, Li Gan knew what was going on. He cupped his fists and said, "Benefactor, I have to remind you that if you want to snatch the glazed fire dragon, you should give up the idea as soon as possible. I'm not being rude, but the glazed fire dragon is a divine beast and must have reached the martial sage realm. If you go near it rashly, your life will be in danger. Moreover, in the past half a month, dozens of experts have entered the depths of the flaming mountain. Those experts came from all over the continent and they were all at least at the third stage of the crossing tribulation realm. Many of them were famous martial lords. With so many experts trying to snatch the glazed fire dragon, I'm afraid the chances are slim. It's better for you not to take the risk." The woman named Qingwan carried a zither on her back and wore a long dress. She also walked to Li Gan's side and said sincerely, "Benefactors, I just received news yesterday that hundreds of experts have gathered in the depths of the flaming mountain. The glazed fire dragon has been forced to appear several times and every time, it would start a massacre and create a bloody storm. It is said that dozens of crossing tribulation realm experts have been killed." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could tell that Li Gan and Qingwan were speaking from the bottom of their hearts. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, "Thank you, young Master Li and Miss Qingwan, for your reminder. We know what to do. Goodbye." After that, he and Yun Yao cupped their hands and bowed to the crowd and turned to leave. Li Gan, Qingwan, and the others could not persuade Ji Tianxing anymore. They could only stand there and watch as Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao left. After the two disappeared into the sea of fire, Li Gan and the others retracted their gazes and began to discuss with complicated expressions. Those two benefactors are the real young geniuses. As expected, geniuses are proud and arrogant. That young Master Ji has not reached the crossing tribulation realm yet, but his combat strength is stronger than ours. It's incredible. He's a rare genius. In my opinion, those two benefactors have a lot of feelings for each other. They're probably a couple. They're a perfect match and both are so outstanding. I'm so envious. Chapter 1756. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had already left. They didn't know that Li Gan, Qingwan, and the others thought highly of them. At the same time, everyone was worried about them. About 12 hours later, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao flew for 70,000 miles and finally left the outer region of the Mountain of Flames. When they entered the central region, they could clearly feel that the flames between heaven and earth were more violent, and the temperature had almost doubled. In order to maintain the dermic power shield, their dermic powers were consumed at a much faster rate. However, at this moment, Ji Tianxing suddenly stopped flying and landed on a mountain peak that was completely golden in color. Yun Yao followed and asked with concern, "Tianxing? What's wrong? Do you need to stop and rest for a while?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with a smile, "Not really. I think I'm about to find what I'm looking for." Yun Yao was stunned for a moment, and then a look of surprise appeared on her face. She asked, "You mean, the material to repair the divine sword?" "That's right." Ji Tianxing nodded and pointed at the mountain under his feet. He said, "Just now I used my divine sense to check carefully on the way here. Almost every mountain contains a large amount of metal, and there are some ore veins buried underground. Although many of the ore veins are rare and can be mined with valuable ores, I don't want to waste time. I just checked that there are 3 ore veins hidden in the mountain under our feet, and one of them is the golden crow copper ore." And Yun Yao immediately understood what he meant. Golden crow copper ore is rare to begin with. Any piece of ore with high purity can be sold for a sky-high price of 100,000 spirit stones. However, the conditions for the formation of golden crow copper ore are very special, and it grows very slowly. Even a vein that has been growing for thousands of years may only be 1,000 feet long. Only a golden crow copper ore that has been growing for tens of thousands of years can give birth to a piece of golden crow copper marrow. Ji Tianxing revealed a faint smile and nodded. "Absolutely correct. It is checked. The golden crow copper ore in this mountain seems to be more than 10,000 feet long. 3,000 zhang long." Yun Yao blinked her beautiful eyes, revealing an expectant look. "It must be an ore vein that has been growing for more than 10,000 years. It has a chance to produce gold crow copper marrow. Let's go in and take a look," Ji Tianxing said as he drew the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand. Seeing that there was no one around, he flew to the mountainside with Yun Yao. Then he found a mountain wall that was closest to the mine and stabbed out a few sword lights with his sword. Ping ping ping. 4 dazzling golden sword lights pierced into the faint golden mountain wall. Suddenly, a large hole was pierced through the glass-like mountain wall. The opening was about 20 feet wide and more than 20 feet deep. The two of them entered the deep cave, Ji Tianxing leading the way with his sword in hand. He used his sword skill 3 more times and dug a hole 1,000 feet deep before he entered the belly of the mountain. The belly of the mountain was hollow and filled with caves of various sizes. They were all naturally formed. The gold crow copper ore that Ji Tianxing was looking for was in a huge cave that was 3,000 feet wide. The ground, ceiling and surrounding walls of the cave were all dark red with a metallic luster. The air was extremely hot. The cave was filled with raging waves of fire that were enough to melt immortal soul-level Dharma treasures. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were inside the cave. They had no choice but to channel more magic power to maintain the operation of the shield and resist the burning of the spirit fire. The cave was filled with jagged rocks of strange shapes. The ground was covered with mounds, piles of rocks and holes. Rows of faint golden stalactites hung upside down from the ceiling of the cave, like a forest of spears. A dark gold ore vein that was more than 3,000 feet long was lying on the ground like a giant dragon. This was the gold crow copper ore that Ji Tianxing was looking for. The ore veins stretched from one end of the cave to the other, passing through the entire cave. They could not see the source of the ore vein, nor could they see the end of the ore vein. They did not know how long it was. Most of the ore vein was buried underground. Only a small part of it was exposed, but it was still 100 feet high. The dark gold ore vein emitted a mysterious and ancient aura. It also had a terrifying temperature that burned people's souls. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao stared at the gold crow copper ore and used their divine senses to examine it carefully. From the situation of this ore vein, it should be more than 10,000 years old. It has been purified by the glass heavenly fire. I just don't know if the ore vein has produced gold crow copper marrow? Yun Yao thought for a moment and said, Tianxing, let's search separately. It will save more time. You go north and I'll go south. Ji Tianxing nodded in agreement. They searched north along the ore vein from the middle of the cave. Yun Yao and he had their backs facing each other. They searched south along the ore vein. The cave was silent. The two of them were focused on searching. Soon 15 minutes passed. The two of them arrived at the two ends of the cave. They were blocked by the rock walls. However, neither of them found the gold crow copper marrow. Ji Tianxing sighed in disappointment. This ore vein is more than 10,000 feet long. More than half of it is buried in the mountain. We can only use a secret technique to drill into the mountain and search. Yun Yao comforted him. Don't be discouraged. This ore vein has been growing for 10,000 years. It is very rare on the continent. It is very likely that it has produced the gold crow copper marrow. Although it is a little troublesome, we have plenty of time. We can take it slow. Then the two of them continued to search separately. The two of them used a secret technique to drill into the rock layer. They searched north and south along the gold crow copper Oregon. The mountain had been burned by the glass heavenly fire for tens of thousands of years. It was as hard as a high-grade nascent soul Dharma treasure. If the two of them used their divine swords to dig a cave along the ore vein, they would have to go through a lot of trouble. It would be a waste of time and energy. However, the two of them used a secret technique to travel through the mountain. Their speed was very slow. It was about the same as an ordinary person walking. Time passed silently. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Ji Tianxing traveled 3,000 feet in the mountain. He had already reached the end of the gold crow copper Oregon. However, he still did not find the gold crow copper marrow. Therefore, he turned back and went through the cave to meet up with Yun Yao. He had just passed through the cave when he received Yun Yao's divine perception voice transmission. Tianxing, come and see. I found it. Yun Yao's tone was joyful and a little excited. Ji Tianxing was stunned. He hurriedly drilled into the mountain and used a secret technique to rush over. When he found Yun Yao, he saw that Yun Yao was guarding a stone hill with a radius of several hundred feet in the rock layer. The gold crow copper ore stopped here. That huge stone hill was obviously the source of the ore vein. Ji Tianxing followed Yun Yao's instructions and released his divine perception into the stone hill. He saw that there was a lump of ore that was half black and half gold deep in the dark golden stone hill. The ore was as big as a head. Its surface was diamond-shaped. It emitted a faint black golden light. Looked very mysterious. The metal and power aura it contained far surpassed the entire hill. Chapter 1757. Just as Yun Yao had expected, the golden crow copper marrow was indeed nurtured in this mine. Ji Tianxing was filled with joy and excitement. He hurriedly used the burial of heaven to break open the dark gold rock. He spent 15 minutes to dig a hole that was more than 100 feet deep and saw the golden crow copper marrow. However, the golden crow copper marrow had fused with the ore and was very difficult to separate. He tried a few times but he could not use the burial of heaven to cut it off. After all, the burial of heaven was only a supreme-grade essence soul dharma treasure. It had not even reached the tribulation level. Seeing this, Yun Yao had no choice but to use the reverse water divine sword and carefully cut the ore. The reverse water divine sword was a real divine artifact. It was indestructible and unstoppable. After a while, Yun Yao cut out the entire golden crow copper marrow and handed it to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing took the golden crow copper marrow and felt that it was extremely heavy. The muscles in his arms tightened naturally. Although it was only a small piece of ore crystal, it was as heavy as a 1,000-foot mountain. The energy contained in it was extremely powerful and majestic. I thought that the golden crow copper marrow was extremely precious and that we would have to go through a lot of trouble to get it. I didn't expect that we would get this material in less than a day after entering the Mountain of Flames. Yao Yao, it seems like this is a good sign. It means that our trip will be very successful. Ji Tianxing said with satisfaction as he held the golden crow copper marrow in his hands and looked at it. Yun Yao also smiled and nodded. I hope everything goes well. Even if we can't get the glazed fire dragon, it would be great if we can gather the materials to repair the divine sword. However, just as she finished speaking, the originally calm rock layer suddenly trembled. Boom! A muffled sound came from the depths of the ground. The two of them frowned and had a bad feeling. What's going on? There seems to be some movement underground. Is there some kind of demon? As he spoke, Ji Tianxing stored the golden crow copper essence into his spatial ring. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand and released his divine sense to explore the situation underground. At this moment, Zhi Bai and Shou He, who were guarding the cave passage, sent out divine sense transmissions almost at the same time. Master, the situation is not good. Quickly retreat. Master, there seems to be a powerful demonic beast underground. Zhi Bai and Shou He had been secretly following and monitoring the situation around them. The two of them would not show themselves unless it was absolutely necessary. Ji Tianxing hurriedly pulled Yun Yao along and used an escape technique to rush out of the mountain. Then the whole mountain started to shake and a rumbling sound came from underground. As Ji Tianxing fled, his divine sense also detected that there seemed to be a huge earthquake several thousand feet underground. The incomparably hard rock layer seemed to have been struck by a violent force. All of it protruded upwards, twisting and breaking into pieces. A pitch-black claw that was as large as a house reached out from the messy pile of rocks and easily pushed aside the shattered rock layer. The appearance of the giant claw was somewhat similar to a dragon's claw. Its surface was covered with black scales and had pitch-black sharp nails. A moment later, a second giant claw also reached out from the ground. The mountain shook even more violently, and the caves in the belly of the mountain collapsed one after another. A large and sharp black head emerged from the pile of rubble. It was the head of a giant beast, somewhat like a crocodile's head, but more like a pangolin that had been magnified 10,000 times. On the pitch-black head that was covered in scales, there was a pair of dark green eyes that were suffused with an ice-cold light. Its body wriggled a few times and then it drilled out of the ground. With a forceful push of its two sturdy front claws, it crushed an ore vein into pieces. Its entire body emitted an incomparably ferocious aura as it opened its mouth and roared. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing's expression was solemn as he sped up and fled out of the mountain. After a short span of 20 breaths, he and Yun Yao finally left the mountain and returned to the sky shrouded in a sea of fire. However, before the two of them could leave, the golden mountain wall behind them exploded with a bang. Half of the mountain wall had cracked and countless pieces of rubble collapsed. Two gigantic pitch-black claws drilled out of the mountain peak. Immediately after, the mysterious giant beast that was hundreds of feet long and pitch-black all over also rushed out of the mountain. Swoosh! With a flash of black light, the mysterious giant beast pounced in front of Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing pushed Yun Yao away without hesitation. An incomparably powerful force enveloped Yun Yao and sent her thousands of feet away. At the same time, one of the mysterious giant beast's front claws viciously slapped Ji Tianxing. Bam! Ji Tianxing was sent flying on the spot. His entire body was wrapped in a ball of golden light as he tumbled and crashed into the ground 5 kilometers away. The sudden heavy blow destroyed his dermic power shield and injured his internal organs. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, he took out the Kenshin battle robe in time and transformed it into a pair of wings to protect himself. The golden rock wings blocked most of the power, which allowed him to survive. He flew a full 5 kilometers away before he managed to neutralize the impact. He flapped his wings and flew back into the sky. At this moment, the mysterious giant beast pounced in front of Yun Yao again and opened its mouth to spit out a monstrous golden flame. It was the terrifying heavenly glass fire. Seeing that Yun Yao was about to be engulfed by the heavenly glass fire, Ji Tianxing's pupils constricted, and his heart was in his throat. Yao Yao, be careful. Fortunately, Yun Yao was not flustered in the face of danger. She decisively swung the reverse water divine sword and slashed out 36 icy sword lights. Each sword light was 300 feet long, and the 36 sword lights gathered together to form a mysterious array formation. They formed a gigantic disc and began to spin rapidly. The icy blue disc released an endless amount of icy water and frost energy, which met the golden flames in the sky. Boom 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 boom. Water and fire were incompatible. The heavenly glass fire and the icy water and frost energy collided, resulting in an earth-shattering explosion. Endless water vapor rose from the sky, but it was quickly evaporated by the sea of flames. The heavenly glass fire that blotted out the sky was also blocked by the icy blue disk and quickly dissipated. Yun Yao successfully blocked the mysterious giant beast's attack with the reverse water divine sword. When the icy blue disk dissipated, Ji Tianxing had already flown to her side. Seeing that she was safe and sound, Ji Tianxing was relieved. The two of them stood side by side and faced off against the mysterious giant beast. The mysterious giant beast occupied the shattered mountain peak and looked down at the two of them from above. Its dark green eyes revealed a bloodthirsty glint. Shohei, who was hiding in the dark, used his divine sense to send a voice transmission to Ji Tianxing. Master, this mysterious giant beast should be the legendary Xidagarba divine armor. In ancient times, the underground armored beast was a mutated species born from the combination of the fire dragon and the black tortoise. This kind of Xidagarba divine armor is very rare. It lives in the depths of the Earth's core and feeds on magma, earth fire and metal veins. It has the power to control the earth and veins. All kinds of historical records clearly recorded that this kind of Xidagarba divine armor was worthy of being the overlord of the earth. Chapter 1758. I knew that the golden crow copper marrow wouldn't be so easy to obtain. Ji Tianxing looked at the Xidagarba divine armor and muttered to himself. Yun Yao held the water reversal divine sword, her body glowing with icy blue light and strong fighting spirit. Tianxing, this giant beast is too strong and it has devoured many metal veins. Its defense must be very strong. We shouldn't fight it. After we find a chance to shake it off, we should leave this place as soon as possible to avoid more trouble. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and smiled playfully. He said, this Xidagarba divine armor is the legendary ruler of the earth. It has the power to control the earth and veins. If we can capture or subdue it and give it to the earth spirit race as their divine beast, it would be a good choice. The earth spirit race had been living in the sword world with peaceful Earth City as their foundation and developing. The Xidagarba divine armor's power and talent were very similar to the earth spirit races. That was why Ji Tianxing had this idea. Subdue this Xidagarba divine armor? Yun Yao tilted her head to look at him, a look of disbelief in her eyes. Tianxing, we don't even know if we can defeat it, much less subdue it. Ji Tianxing shook his head and said, let's fight it first. As he spoke, he held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the Xidagarba divine armor with a 1,000-foot-long sword light. Sky-shattering sword. The 1,000-foot-long golden sword light contained a wisp of sword intent. Its power and aura had increased. This slash seemed to have the power to tear apart the world as it slashed at the Xitigarbha divine armor's head. A hint of disdain flashed through the Xitigarbha divine armor's dark green eyes. It raised its sturdy left front claw and swatted at the giant golden sword with a claw that was wreathed in raging golden flames. Bang! Golden flames splashed in the sky amidst a deafening sound. The Xitigarbha divine armor was knocked back dozens of feet. The towering mountain beneath it was also on the verge of collapsing. Dense cracks appeared on its surface and countless pieces of rubble collapsed. The giant golden sword was also smashed to pieces, turning into golden fragments and hurricanes that scattered in all directions. The Xitigarbha divine armor clearly did not expect the power of Ji Tianxing's swordsmanship to be so powerful. It had suffered a loss due to its carelessness, so it immediately became more cautious. It looked at Ji Tianxing with murderous eyes. Roar! The Xitigarbha divine armor roared and opened its wide and flat bloody mouth, spitting out endless glazed heavenly flames that poured down like a flood. Before Ji Tianxing could launch a counterattack, Yun Yao, who had been waiting for a long time, brandished the reverse water divine sword and released a huge ice shield. An icy blue light shield with a radius of 1,000 feet enveloped her and Ji Tianxing, protecting them tightly. The celestial glaze fire that descended from the sky fiercely slammed into the icy blue light barrier, causing a series of muffled sounds to erupt. Bang 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 bang. The icy blue light barrier trembled violently and emitted a dazzling cold light. However, it did not shatter and not even a crack appeared. No matter how terrifying the celestial glaze fire was, it was blocked by the icy blue light barrier. Could not hurt Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao at all. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Bai and Shou He, who were hiding in the dark, seized the opportunity and cast a spell to launch an attack. World returned to origin. Sword of all directions. The two of them appeared out of thin air on the left and right sides of the Xitigarbha divine armor. They slashed out a huge sword brilliance that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, slashing the back and ribs of the Xitigarbha divine armor. Another series of muffled bangs rang out, and the Xitigarbha divine armor was forced to retreat. The pitch-black scales on its back and ribs were also slashed by the sword light, causing flames to splatter all over the sky. An incomparably powerful impact force fiercely struck the mountain beneath it. With a series of loud rumbling sounds, the mountain collapsed on the spot and collapsed into pieces. Countless huge rocks piled up into a pile of rubble and ruins, splashing out monstrous red flames and debris. The Xitigarbha divine armor became more and more furious. Its huge body twisted and swung its sturdy tail, smashing it fiercely towards Ji Bai. Ji Bai realized that something was wrong and immediately waved his sword to block. Bang! The giant tail that was more than 20 feet long shattered his defense and sent him flying 10 miles away, smashing into the rubble. The Xitigarbha divine armor still wanted to pounce over and take advantage of the situation to kill Ji Bai. Shou He had already rushed over without caring about his own safety. He waved his sword and stabbed out hundreds of cold lights enveloping its head. Ding ding ding. A series of crisp sounds of metal colliding rang out. Sparks continuously burst out from the head of the Xitigarbha divine armor. It was dizzy from the sword light. Its attack was blocked, so it frantically waved its claws and fiercely slapped at Shou He. Shou He had already retreated 10,000 feet away and dodged its attack. Ji Tianxing rushed over again and waved the Burial of Heaven sword, slashing out a golden sword that flickered with lightning with all his strength. Broken Moon Sword. The sword light that was 1,000 feet long descended from the sky with the divine might of thunder and struck the Xitigarbha divine armor. Boom! It was smashed into the rubble on the spot, and a long and narrow white mark appeared on its back. Tens of thousands of purple lightning arcs wrapped around its body, making crackling noises. The scene was in chaos. Lightning flashed and rubble flew everywhere. Ji Tianxing retreated to Yun Yao's side and said with a solemn expression, "The shell of this Xitigarbha divine armor is terrifyingly powerful. Ordinary methods can't hurt it at all." Yun Yao said in a solemn tone, "It has swallowed too many metal veins and has been tempered by the glass heavenly fire. Its defensive power is already comparable to a tribulation-level magic treasure. From the looks of it, only the reverse water sword can break its defense. I'll find an opportunity to kill it." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, Alright, I'll create an opportunity. At the same time, the Xitigarbha divine armor had just crawled out of the rubble and was roaring at the sky. Ji Tianxing leaped into the sky, holding the burial of heaven with both hands and stabbing at it with all his might. Stab. A cold light flashed in the sea of fire. In the next moment, the crack on the back of the Xitigarbha divine armor emitted a cold light that blotted out the sky like a mushroom cloud. Boom. An earth-shattering explosion resounded for hundreds of miles. The Xitigarbha divine armor was sent flying by the explosion. A bloody hole appeared on its back and countless fragments splashed out. A stream of black-red blood spurted out. Before it could crawl out, Ji Tianxing descended from the sky and released a secret technique. Lightning. The third Dharma eye on his forehead opened and released vast purple divine lightning. It condensed into a pillar of divine lightning and blasted towards the back of the Xitigarbha divine armor. Boom. Thunder exploded and resounded in the sky. The wound on the back of the Xitigarbha divine armor immediately expanded several times. The flesh on the wound also became charred like charcoal and black smoke rose in spirals. The heart-wrenching pain made it furious. It roared and pounced towards Ji Tianxing crazily with its claws. Chapter 1759. While Ji Bai and Shohei were repelling the Xitigarbha divine armor, Ji Tianxing used his strongest trump card. He rushed to the front of the Xitigarbha divine armor as fast as a stream of light. He raised his left palm and released endless golden divine flames. God-slaying spear. The destructive golden flames condensed into a 30-meter-long spear and stabbed at the wound on the back of the Xitigarbha divine armor. The defense of the Xitigarbha divine armor was extremely strong, but its speed was not fast. It was too late to realize that something was wrong. Bang! With a loud, muffled explosion, the god-slaying spear stabbed into its back, penetrating its internal organs and exploding. A large mass of flesh and internal organs were burned to ashes by the golden divine flames. The Xitigarbha divine armor roared in pain, spitting out blood and flesh foam from its bloody mouth. It struggled and rolled wildly in the ruins. Seeing this scene, Yun Yao decisively seized the opportunity and rushed over with the water-reversed divine sword. Heavenly water line sword separates the world. She held the water-reversed divine sword with both hands and used all her strength to slash out 100-meter-long icy blue sword light. Boom! The Xitigarbha divine armor could not dodge in time and was immediately slashed in the back by the sword light. The huge bloody hole with a radius of 30 meter long was immediately cut open by the sword light, and a 20-meter-long wound opened. Black-red blood sprayed out like a fountain. The terrifying cold air of the water-reversed divine sword invaded its body and immediately froze its flesh and internal organs. It wailed in pain a few times and dark golden-colored glazed heavenly fire gushed out of its body. It desperately drilled into the rubble and ruins, trying to escape back to the depths of the ground. Ji Tianxing had already planned this, so how could he let it escape so easily? He took out a mysterious black talisman from his space ring, made a few gestures with both hands, and released a few dazzling lights to activate the talisman. Soul-stabilizing divine talisman. With a low shout, the black talisman ignited with flames and immediately turned into a black stream of light, flying toward the Xitigarbha divine armor. Whoosh! The mysterious black stream of light instantly drilled into the body of the Xitigarbha divine armor, releasing a mysterious invisible power. Immediately, the roars of the Xitigarbha divine armor came to an abrupt end. Its frantically struggling body also stiffened and it was stunned on the spot. It was as if it had been petrified, as if it had lost its consciousness and remained motionless on the spot. Seeing this scene, Ji Bai and Shohei revealed puzzled expressions. Even Yun Yao was surprised. She looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. Tianxing, you sealed its soul? How did you do it? Ji Tianxing smiled and explained, when I was at the God Bestowment Mountain, I saved the third elder's life, so he gave me a bunch of talismans and pills as thanks. The soul-stabilizing sacred talisman was a saint-level talisman that he gave me. It can seal one's soul. Martial artists and demons below the martial sage realm are unable to withstand the power of the soul-stabilizing sacred symbol. Yun Yao was enlightened. She smiled faintly and said, saint-level talismans are priceless treasures. You used them just like that? Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, to be able to capture a sixth-stage crossing tribulation realm Xidagarba divine armor, it was worth it to use a saint-level talisman. Yao rest for a while. I'll deal with this Xidagarba divine armor. After speaking, he flew to the rubble and used a capturing technique to put the Xidagarba divine armor into the sword world. He personally escorted the Xidagarba divine armor into the sword world and landed in the peaceful soil city. In the peaceful soil city, nearly 8,000 Earth Spirit Clan people were working and cultivating as usual. Ji Tianxing entered the city governor's mansion and asked the guards to find the clan leader, the Golden Mountain King. After the Golden Mountain King bowed to him, he asked, "Young master, what are your orders?" Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "I just captured an ancient mutated beast. I'm going to give it to the Earth Spirit Clan as the clan's guardian divine beast." The Golden Mountain King's eyes widened. He asked in surprise, "What ancient mutated beast?" Ji Tianxing brought him to a spacious square. Only then did he reach out and release a golden light, releasing the Xidagarba divine armor. The 1,000-foot-long Xidagarba divine armor landed on the square with a plop, causing the ground to tremble and dust to fly into the air. When the Golden Mountain King saw the Xidagarba divine armor's appearance, his eyes widened in shock. This ancient mutated beast seems to be the descendant of the burrowing earth beast. Its strength and aura are so powerful, far surpassing the essence soul realm. Could it have reached the tribulation realm? Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. That's right. This is the ancient mutated beast Xidagarba divine armor. It's a mutated beast between a spirit beast and a divine beast. If it has enough opportunities and resources, it can also grow to the level of a divine beast in the future. Most importantly, this giant beast is the legendary overlord of the earth. It can control the earth and mineral veins. The Golden Mountain King exclaimed for a while before gradually coming back to his senses. He said excitedly, "That's right. For us Earth Spirit Clan, the burrowing earth beast is the best pet and companion. This Xidagarba divine armor has a part of the bloodline of a divine beast. It's a divine beast for us." "Young master, are you really going to give such a rare ancient mutated beast to us?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Of course. Make the best use of it. The Xidagarba divine armor's attributes and power are very compatible with your Earth Spirit Clan. With this divine beast, the Earth Spirit Clan's people will definitely benefit greatly. I'm just worried that the soul fixation talisman can only last for half a month. Can you completely tame this tribulation realm mutated beast in such a short time?" The Golden Mountain King was stunned for a moment. He quickly nodded and said, "Of course I can. Young master, please don't worry. Our Earth Spirit Clan has a blood spirit secret method passed down from our ancestors. It's specially used to sign a contract with a pet. I'll immediately gather all the people of the clan and build an altar to use the secret method. I'll combine the strength of all the people and use everyone's efforts to sign a contract with this Xidagarba divine armor. As long as the spell is cast successfully, this Xidagarba divine armor will become the guardian beast of our clan. It will guard our clan loyally forever." Hearing him say so, Ji Tianxing nodded with relief and said, "That's good. Then I'll leave it to you. You must take care of it properly." The Golden Mountain King bowed excitedly and said solemnly, "Young master, please don't worry. I will definitely not disappoint you. This Xidagarba divine armor is a divine beast that you gave to our clan. Our clan will always remember this kindness and be loyal to you forever." Ji Tianxing nodded and turned to leave. Swish. With a flash of brilliance, he left the sword world and returned to the Sea of Fire. Yun Yao, Zhibai, and Shohei did not rest on the mountain peak. They had all drilled into the ruins that were piled up like mountains and were busy excavating the Golden Crow copper mine underground. Although Ji Tianxing had already obtained the most precious Golden Crow copper essence, that mine was also a priceless treasure. Since he had already encountered it, there was no reason to let it go. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.